What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Nightmares Podcast, where we talk about all things horror, going exclusively to guests. Where we talk about filmmaking, music, movies, which is filmmaking and movies are pretty damn similar.
Good job being redundant, buddy.
That's my middle name. Anyway, with that being said, I'm of course here with my partner Zachary Smith.
What's up?
And we have the awesome filmmaker, Mr. Daniel Goad, here today. Thank you so much for being with us, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and what you're all about, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. So I'm a filmmaker from Tennessee. I've been working in film since basically 2008. Started on the bottomest. It's not a word, but the lowest rung on the ladder. It is. I like to be called a gopher. Usually it's the person you tell to go get stuff. So that's how I started. Usually, hey, go get tape, go get batteries, go take this person to the airport. So that's basically lower than a assistant. So from there, I just started getting more and more experience. And then I felt like I had the courage enough to go, hey, let's make a movie. And then we're basically here with Parallels being finished and almost waiting to be sent out to people. So that's a small excerpt of the last few years of my life.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that little excerpt, as you say. We have a lot of words of the day that you're throwing out. You got a good vocabulary, which I appreciate. So we always start off the podcast with a very important question, and then it kind of dissolves into or evolves into a really great discussion, which is, when did horror enter your life? When did it become a big thing? Because we're all not only creators of horror, but we're also giant fans of it. I can see that by you wearing the Thing T-shirt, and that's a staple. That's a fucking staple of horror, but of course. So, when did horror enter your life?
So I think everyone has a terrible memory. Like, as far as humans go, like you can only remember the last time that you remembered something. It's not the actual thought. I've had this question posed to me a lot over the years because I've either done podcasts or just talked to people in life. There's not really a pinpointed year. It's kind of a thing where you're kind of born with that innate fear already in your brain. Like, everyone's afraid of the dark. I don't care what you say. Everyone's a pussy when it comes to darkness, the void, the unknown. So I would say I don't know, a month old probably. But in terms of a real answer, the first time I ever really got scared, horror grabbed me, the genre, the thing, someone created this. It wasn't just the open ocean and that scares the shit out of you. It was definitely Halloween, because that made me just afraid of the dark and John Carpenter's music. I phrase that word terribly. I love John Carpenter's music. It just makes me get all goosebumpy. And then honestly, it was the remake of The Ring.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I watched that. I watched that as kind of my brain wasn't fully formed yet. It was really messing with my perception of stuff. I remember watching it. I was so small that my feet wouldn't touch the floor when I was sitting on the bed. So as the movie kept going, my feet kept raising higher and higher away from the bed because I was like, well, there's a monster in my bed. Something's going to grab me. So my thighs were burning by the end of the movie because I had just had them up into my chest. So
that's called the Ring workout. That's the Ring workout.
Yeah. So those two movies, I guess, are what started it, or at least what caused me to constantly think of it as a persistent thing. But yeah, we'll just throw John Carpenter. He's such an underappreciated artist. Let's just keep throwing stuff to him. So I would say Halloween's probably my first real thought of what horror is. So
nice. I think, and Zack had a similar story that if you're a fan of the podcast, you've heard dozens and dozens of times. But Zack started with Freddy and Jason when he was 2, and then also went to the Predators and the Terminators of the world. So Zack's always kind of been with horror his entire life.
Yes.
As a simplicity of the answer.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I imagine that just by this conversation, you're kind of in the same age bracket as the rest of us. Are you in your early 30s?
I was born in 89. So Depending on how you look at it, I'm either a dumb baby or a really old, boring man. So did whatever you want to look at. My kids just think of me as just an old, boring man, but it's fine.
Which is with a description often people give of John Carpenter sometimes as well.
It's one way of looking at it,
With
Mark.
short temper, hard to work with other people. Totally. It's not me at all.
No. He's a curmudgeon old man. But he's also
I can play the keyboard. I can say that.
There you go. The so because I know that oftentimes when I talk to '90s kids, it's often a discussion of Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and Our Real Monsters, Animorphs, and things of that nature. I don't know if any of those struck you when you were coming up.
They do, but I think a problem is I like psychology a lot, and I like it to the point of annoying people with it, because when you start picking away someone's brain, you get to a different tier of oh my God, this guy won't shut up. But I think when you're young, the peer pressure thing, not to be stereotypical, you want to like what other people like because you want friends, you want to find your clique. I liked all that stuff, but I really don't feel like I was mentally prepared to understand what I was watching. And then when you go back to it, the nostalgia kind of replaces all the original feelings that you have. So you kind of cheat yourself. If you're too young to watch something, you kind of ruin the experience. I'm actually doing something in my life now where I'm rewatching stuff that I watched when I was a single digit age, and I'm getting a different experience from it. Because it's like Inception. If you're stupid, Inception won't make sense. It's like an Interstellar. Interstellar, it's an amazing movie, but if you don't really get it and you don't pay attention, you're just wasting your time. So I'm trying to do that. So when I think of Are You Afraid of the Dark, for instance, I remember being creeped out by it, but also appreciating the story. Especially everyone's favorite episode, the rock painting, where it's the time travel thing where he was showing his loved one that he actually carved it and he fell off and died from it. That was a great episode. But as a little kid, you don't know the impact of the actual storytelling, the morose romantic part of what they're writing about. It's all creepy noises and sound effects and jump scares and whatever, and that's what makes you scared. But you kind of miss all the nuance of what makes it a cool, compelling story. So I'm trying to do that and go back in time and rewatch some of these older movies that I didn't give a shit about when I was 9. So
well, here's what I will say though, is I think that's part of the reason why 30 years later we're still talking about 90s children's horror television. I mean, that's what makes it timeless, is these interesting stories. I mean, it's like Diet Twilight Zone, or Twilight Zone for kids. I mean, that was what they were trying to go for with these philosophical debates, or not necessarily debates, but discussions about interesting things that may go over a kid's head, but at least you're planting the seeds of critical thinking when it comes to the realm of the macabre, the weird, the horror, the science fiction, whatever the case may be.
A lot of people might make fun of it and maybe not even remember it, but MTV's Fear was a really big inspiration because I loved the seriousness that they took and the design of how the show went. And obviously they stopped getting funding and it wasn't cool anymore to have horror television. But that was a big one too of after what was it? BAM wasn't on there yet. I mean, Jackass hadn't came out. I don't even remember the time frame now, but MTV's Fear was a big thing. I think that was an indication, just how people getting on roller coasters or something, the endorphins and the dopamine feeling and everything that goes in. I wanted to be scared. I was oh my God, why am I watching this? But you never change the channel and you're still trying to reach for that, not high, but the next big jump scare, the next thing to make you get cold chills or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a phenomenal English teacher in high school, and he gave me a great piece of advice, and I still follow it to this day. And I also bring it into other aspects of entertainment and art, so to speak. He always reminded me, he said, Mark, always read a book twice, at least twice, because the book doesn't change, but you do. And it's the same thing with film and the same thing with that. And you brought up an interesting topic about how you're watching new things you used to watch in the past, and you're going, well, was this as good as I remember? and then also being excited by, yes, it was as good as I remember, but I'm now seeing things. So I'm very interested. I want to kind of, because Zach has just as long of history as you do. So I'd love to hear some things from you and from Zach and from you as well about movies you watched in the past, horror movies you watched in the past, and you were having fun with them and you enjoyed them, but then you watch them again and you're like, wow, I didn't catch that, or like I didn't understand that, or that piece of new. I call it the grease effect. The not in horror, but the grease effect is when you're a kid, you enjoy the music and you're having fun, but then you don't realize like that Rizzo was pregnant, or there was a pregnancy scare, or they were talking about having the car so they can fuck bitches in it. I know that's a very crude way to say that, but that's what it was. I mean, even the musical, it was even dirtier than in the movie. Like it was like turning a Buick into a bedroom. Like it was a how-to guide. So there's a lot of interesting things, but for two people that have had a very longevity with horror, I'm very interested to hear from both of you on what is something that you caught that you didn't catch before.
Do you want me to go first, or do you want Zach to go first?
Dealer's choice.
You go first.
So, I mean, obviously, throwing that on the table, like your brain goes in so many different directions. I love movies that deal with time, like messing with the chronological order of things.
Sure.
So, like I recently just watched Time Crimes. Is it just as a aside? Like it's not something that I watched beforehand, but like I feel like it's one of the best movies ever to deal with messing with a timeline of events. I loved it so much. Like it was totally. It's not meta. That's not the word, but it was poking fun in itself, and there was Easter eggs, and like it just was messing around with this fear of that you live inside this bubble, and it's like bubbles inside bubbles. So I just love movies with time. So the first movie that came to mind when you were talking was Memento.
Yeah,
I watched it
figured.
way before I needed to. Again, I wasn't mentally prepared of what I was seeing. It was the first time I ever watched Guy Pearce. I knew that I watched Joe Pantoliano of different stuff, but I watched Memento after I watched Matrix. I know that. So I'd already recognized him, and I was like, oh, and that's the thing too, like the younger that you are, you don't give a shit who actors are. You don't necessarily, you might remember their faces, but you don't carry them as like a career. You still look at them as characters. I think that's why as a younger person, most of the time, you get so scared because it's like actually a thing. It's not someone getting a paycheck or a salary or royalties. Like it's actually happening. So I don't know. Memento is a good one because I remember watching it and it was fun, but I just don't think that I got it. And then when I watched it later, it just meant so much more. Like the more experiences that you have and the longer that you live, you can pick up on stuff and you can learn from people, and you get more of like a reservoir of like how to feel. So you don't just have like two versions of a flavor that you can have. Like you can, it's like Baskin Robbins, the longer you live. But man, now I'm really trying to feel. I know Memoirs of a Geisha. It's not a horror movie, but that's one of my favorite movies ever. And like if you watch it too young, you won't care because you don't know what love is. You don't know what like despair and imprisonment within your love for someone. Like I don't know. I'm going like way away from like horror movies, but even The Thing. Let's just take my T-shirt. I remember enjoying The Thing because it was a different area. It wasn't like my backyard. Like Halloween scared me because it was a neighborhood. So like it could happen wherever. No one's going to Antarctica. I've never met anyone that went to Antarctica. And just the music was everything different. It took you completely away from what you were doing. So number one, like it made you afraid of just new feelings, entirely new feelings. I do remember when I first watched it, like I remember feeling cold. Like I had like
True.
I wasn't cold. I probably watched it in like the summer, but like it just made me feel like I was there. But then watching it later in life, and it's on my phone. I've had 6 or 7 different phones for years, and that The Thing and Session 9 are on my phone always. As soon as I get a new phone, I put them on there. It's like a security blanket. It's like a comfort thing. So I've watched them those two horror movies like more than anything else. But I remember watching The Thing later in life and like picking up on like all the work that they did, the meticulous OCD-ness of like the geography and how they laid out the damn sets and how serious everything was. And like it made me motivated and like inspired. It wasn't just a thing. Like it wasn't like something that people just did on a weekend. Like this was a whole thing. Like it was the same thing when I'm just talking. I apologize.
No,
First time I watched-
Keep going,
you're
man.
good.
Keep
Go,
going.
go.
First time I watched The Fellowship of the Ring. Like I love Lord of the Rings now, but when I was a kid, I was a dumbass teenager and I had no idea what I was watching. I remember getting so mad at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. I was like, they just walked for 2.5 hours. What
People are still upset
but-
about that.
But I make fun of myself because I was a dumbass kid. I had no idea what I was watching. I watched it later and I just appreciated like, oh my God, this is amazing. I mean, they created everything. Like literally Peter Jackson was a deity. He created this world. And they're one of my favorite things below Star Wars now. It's just, but
Same guy who
I'm
brought you
trying to picture-
who brought you guys Dead Alive. What a weird
Yeah.
career he had before Lord of the Rings.
Dead Alive, Bad Taste, you name it.
Oh, bad. Bad taste, man.
Fun movie.
Fun movie, but fucking just weird. It just something.
I'm gonna throw it to Zach. I spoke for a little bit. Let me
Okay.
see if what you're gonna say
the one thing
elicits like a thing from you.
Yeah, the one thing I will say though is just as a fun little tidbit that I just thought in my head about The Thing, and it's interesting if you think about horror before Psycho. Like it was all gothic. It was all in exotic locations and things that never would have happened in real life. And then Halloween and Psycho kind of brought it to the forefront of the neighborhood. And through the lens of science fiction horror, it brought it back to the distant place. Because back in the day, like it was always in the castles of Romania and the moors of England, and like it never really got to a neighborhood place. And it's funny that Halloween scares the shit out of you because it's in the neighborhood, but then The Thing and Alien came in and said, no, we're going to bring it back to this formula of a distant place, like the original monsters of Universal had it in a distant place.
So just because you say that, I don't have sources. I can't put like a works cited together, but I do remember reading an article that was about, again, let's jumping on the psychology of it. Horror has always been like an ebb and flow thing. Some people have liked it, and then a decade goes by, and then people hate it, and then another decade goes by, just ups and downs.
Yeah.
Between, like, again, let's just say Psycho, and then I don't know, Event Horizon is another like favorite movie of mine. When you look at what's going on in the world when certain horror movies are released, you look at what the majority of people are afraid of, or at least what people are trying to get away from. So when you start looking at movies like, let's say, around like the Manson area and that time frame in the world, if you look at all the movies that are released, it's trying to make you afraid of what's super close to you and what's around you. But then like in the 80s, almost everything was away. It was either trying to push it into a different star system or a different country. It's like overloading on the science fiction to like make you afraid of the future and all this like 1984 stuff of like surveillance and it's man, I wish I knew more about, or I could remember and recall the article, but it was like every decade there's like a social commentary that pulls it away, kind of like They Live, where it's so inundated with like trying to make fun of what's actually going on, but it's so prophetic that it makes sense and it's not too far-fetched, but it keeps happening. And it kind of was killed in like the mid 90s because then you started having these franchises pop up and like you could actually make money off of sequels, which was like blowing people away, because beforehand it was like, no one's going to watch a third installment of this movie. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to fund that. But then like it started actually making money. And it was proving that almost all the time people want to be afraid of a specific thing. And if you can tap into it, they'll pay for that theater ticket. They'll buy that VHS on the shelf. And it's like they want to be scared. So it's almost like the filmmakers at the time frame were chasing the dragon of like, okay, what is this the social thing now that people are getting afraid of? Like, is it a nuclear explosion? Is it a kaiju? Like, what is it a fae? Is it like a little sock stealing fairy that people want to be afraid of? So I don't know. I wish I could find that article. If I find it, I'll send it to you later.
Yeah, and then the thing was kind of topical for AIDS, and then also too, what's so funny is ultimate capitalist is a personality. They love, they live. Which is very ironic about my personality, but like. I often say, like, I was like, it's the greatest love hate letter to crony capitalism and cultural decay about everybody doing it. It's like they do American Psycho and They Live in a movie marathon, and you'll talk about some shallowness of urban decay and everything else. But I did want Zack I did want Zack to talk about some of the horror movies that he took another look at and really said, oh wow, I really missed that.
So there are a plethora of movies I could go into about that, because when I grew up watching movies, I cared about mainly just a handful of things. Blood, gore, explosions, and cool-looking monsters or effects. That was all that really mattered to me. If you provided those, for the most part, I was satisfied. It didn't really matter. As I got older, of course, that's when stories started coming into the picture. Like, the biggest example of something like this, I would say, is the Terminator franchise. Terminator 1 and 2. I enjoyed Terminator 1 as a kid, but I loved Terminator 2. Now as an adult, Terminator 1 is my favorite Terminator movie, and one of my favorite movies of all time. There's just... the story of that one compared to... I don't really know how to explain what I enjoy about that one more. It just... something speaks to me about the first Terminator movie more than the second Terminator movie does. It's the music, the atmosphere. There's just something about that movie in particular that I just go, I fucking love this movie. It's almost a perfect movie to me, and it's weird. And I don't know how that happened or why it happened, but I fucking love it. It's just an amazing movie. Terminator 2 is also an amazing movie. Those are two really fantastic movies, but just that... I don't know, that time difference. I watch it and I go, yeah, Terminator 1. I definitely like this more than the second one. It's amazing.
I definitely have a few theories on it, and I often joke with people. I said Terminator and Predator should have the same rules. You should cut out the first 5 minutes of it because it actually will make a perfect movie even more perfect.
I disagree.
And I'll explain the reason why. Is because if you had, well, first of all, the rules for Predator are made fun of in the Honest trailer, which is it would be even better if you didn't know right away if it was an alien, because you see the spaceship at the beginning. And also, too, is I think Terminator would have been even more perfect if you didn't show the dystopian future at the very beginning and the audience was along the ride truly with Sarah Connor, and she had to question whether or not Reese was actually like telling the truth, or he was actually insane, or she was insane. And also, too, is just the concept of, by the way, this is a great standalone concept by itself. Imagine if you had a situation where someone with your name was being killed. Every person with your first and last name within your same city was being killed, and that's where the movie starts. That there's a serial killer out there killing everyone with your name, and then it dissolves into that you're the future mother, the future leader of the resistance against the machines, and a machine came back in time to kill you, and then another human came back through a time portal to save you. And there's also a strong possibility that you might be fucking insane and you might be imagining all of this shit. So that, by the way, and that's when you know you have a perfect movie. When you can turn it in almost every direction and it'll still be awesome. That's why that movie is perfect, because there's literally almost no way that you could fuck it up, because it's so solid of a movie that you can take a couple different turns and it'd still be a fucking amazing movie. And I think
I can agree.
Yeah, I'm I definitely wanted to hear what you had to say on that, because I saw you trying to jump in, so
Yes.
Please jump in.
Well, and not jump in. It's just like you're making me think of stuff. Like it's one of those conversational topics, like the water cooler conversations,
Sure.
where usually everyone has an opinion on a movie. You know, it comes out and it's basically the job of the viewer, the audience, to like have an opinion. Sometimes the directors don't give a shit. Sometimes they use that and they move that into like their sequels. So I don't know if Cameron did that for Terminator 2 or if he even cared, but it makes you think like it's like when you make fun of dumb characters in horror movies. It's like, why did you not lock the door? Why did you go upstairs? You have to have dumb decisions to have the story progress. Sometimes, like this, you know, the domino effect has to go into some way. That way, the ending can converge and something can happen. If everyone was smart in a movie, you know, not many things would go on. But the way that you're describing, like Predator and Terminator, for instance, like I never really thought about it in that way, but that's that little piece that you just said is what makes people want to do their own stuff. Like, oh, this is a perfect idea. Let me tweak a few things, and then that can be my next story. Or like, this could be the next big thing of like a clever twist or a way to tell a story arc. So I love that. Like, I was smiling off of that. Of like, I never really realized if in your head, like headcanon, like, oh, well, every time I watch this movie, I don't give a shit about the first 15 minutes. That way I can be in this world of like watching the movie on my terms. But no, I was enjoying hearing both of you talk about it. And technically, I don't consider Predator a horror movie.
Ooh,
I know, but it's kind of just the definition. But it's just a bullshit thing of it's like a genre of music. It doesn't matter. Just listen to the music. Why have 15 subgenres?
Yeah.
But when I watch Predator, it's just a creature film. But then, yeah, if I was prodded, if I was goaded into the direction, well, then yeah, you're afraid of the creature. It's a horror movie. You experience fear. It's a horror. Yada yada. But I agree with you. If the opening of Predator was cut, it would be a lot more enjoyable of not knowing what's going on. I like the dystopian kind of cut in Terminator because it sets the tone. I like that more than cutting out the. It's like the opening of The Thing. Like it could have been better, but I don't know. I love both of those movies. I like Predator more than Terminator.
Gotcha.
But
so I'm gonna jump in on this. So I like the intro to Terminator. I think it sets the stage, and I love having that visual like representation of what the world is gonna look like. It really just sets the stage, the tone of what you're in for, what the stakes are, and it's just like, all right, cool, I'm along for the ride. Plus, I get to see something really cool. That's one of the things I love about movies. I get to visualize. I'm not the type of person who just likes, oh, but imagine what. No, I want to see. Like I'm coming to see the movie. I want to see the cool shit. That's why I'm coming to see this. That's the whole point. So please show me. Don't leave things up to ambiguity. Like if you like that, you know what? Cool. That's your thing. I respect that. Me, I like the visual representations. So what's up?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you did not like Skinamarink then.
Which one?
Skinamarink, did you not watch that or not like that movie then?
I haven't seen it. I know it's popping up all over the place, but I have not seen it. Like funny enough, the first time we actually heard about this, we were going to the music box to watch The Predator. We saw it up on the marquee there. We're like, what the hell is that? So, and that's actually another thing I want to talk about. The Predator being a horror movie. If you don't consider it a horror movie, that's fine. I'm very indifferent about it. Like, if you consider it a horror movie, cool. There's plenty of blood, guts, and there's enough violence in it to, if you wanted to, okay, you could justify it. The movie doesn't scare me. The movie excites me. Like, when it comes to Predator, Predator is something I would say that is the earliest movie that I grew up with that I consider, like, I paid attention to the creature because I loved it so much. The Predator was something I idolized growing up as a kid, like this space alien that comes down and hunts humans for trophy, like that whole idea. Just at that point I wanted to get into hunting. I bought a whole bunch of, like, I bought Carnivore's Dinosaur Hunter and stuff. Like, it spawned this whole thing for me. And like the Predator, even the Predator ideology to me is like a religion. It's a very honor-based society. Like, don't be an asshole. Like, keep to these rules, don't be a dick. Like, I love that. Like, that's actually where I started coming up with like my own honor rules and stuff like that, and just building me who I am as a character. A lot of that comes from the Predator race, the ideology, not the new stuff. The new stuff just kind of throws all that to the wind, and I'm not the biggest fan. So
I just
up?
love it that it's so goddamn manly.
Yeah, go for it.
I gotta correct you though, because it's one of those things. Like retconning is a great thing sometimes. Sometimes it can ruin stuff, but you can't throw away all the sequels of Predator, because that's kind of where they laid out all of that lore and the history of their race. I love what are they called? Utja.
Yautja. So this is where
Yautja.
So for me, when it comes to I follow the comics and I follow the movies all the way up until Shane Black's The Predator. The Predator for me was the most. When I walked out of that movie, I walked straight to I was silent, like, because he was with me. It was me and my other friends and my brother.
Oh, no.
Me and my brother are two of the biggest Predator fans you will ever. I walked to the bar. I ordered a drink, an old fashioned, and I downed the whole thing, and I just went on this rant like, what the hell was that? But so that movie I legitimately hate with every fiber of my being. Prey just came out. It's not the worst movie in the world, but I feel like it's not a Predator movie. Like, it's not a bad movie, but it's not Predator. Like, it breaks too many rules, and it's just like, it felt unnecessary. Like, if you wanted to do a Predator hunting Native Americans, cool, that's cool, let's do that, but, just follow Predator lore, technology rules, like the little details, like when he's walking in the water and his cloak isn't disabled. Like, Predators have never been able to do that. Water's been their kryptonite. It's ridiculous that this advanced species that can space travel can't water. It's just like, yeah, we're fucked.
Well,
he even gets covered in bear blood, and it just the small little details like that. What's up?
I have a small analogy that might help. And I know that you've heard this before in conversations where it's suspension of disbelief, but don't scoff at me yet.
Okay.
Wouldn't dare.
I think in the same frame of let's just use like an action movie. Okay. Sometimes you have to have a piston underneath the ATV to jump and make the explosion. Like sometimes you can see the flammable barrel that causes the explosion. It's okay. Like, you still have the payoff of the thing. I think when you have an intellectual property that has so much, I guess, open-endedness that you can make up your own shit, or it's a species that has like a really long lifespan, especially if you put something in space where like they can have eons of lifetime where it's just a few years on our planet. All that's really cool because you kind of have free reign of whatever you want to do. I think with that though, I kind of have some of your same gripes or your similar grievances with some stuff, but don't let it ruin your experience. For whatever reason, the people who signed the contracts, they gave that person, like, I love Shane Black. I hate the Predator. Yeah. Like I felt as if I was a family member of his, I'd be like, man, did you really need the money that bad? Like, creative control. Like,
we'll lend you some money, really, Jesus. We'll lend it to
really
you.
Bad. But I only know people that are kind of on the small form factor of movies. So I don't know anyone who's worked on like a $200 million movie. I'm not going to like bullshit. So I don't know like the level of control that you have or the people that are telling you what to do. I do constantly think of Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi. I don't want to talk about Star Wars on this podcast, but the signing your signature and getting money to do a movie, but you almost have everything taken away from you because of the decisions that you're making to be creative, especially if it's a series that already has like a foundation, man, is that difficult and super depressing. Yeah. So like, just in terms of the Predator and like Prey, I'm sure that they had tons of whiteboards and they had stuff that was just erased every day, and maybe their script was thrown out 16 times. I've learned to kind of ingest that stuff and then put it away. Like, I try not to have I don't want to get so emotional with like the practicality of some stuff, because I know everything costs money. It has to go through 20 people that wear suits and ties and never set foot on the set. It's just the bullshit of the corporate monster that it is. So I haven't watched Prey yet, so I'm not gonna again just like make it like I've seen it, but I've seen all the other Predators before that, and yeah, it's really hard to like do what you want to, but then you have all these people going, well, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist yet. You can't use that technology. That's not real. People are going to make fun of it. The audience is going to know.
Nerds can man, nerd culture, man, could be fucking just exhausting.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Dan, real quick though, I did want to say this, about Predator and about it being a horror movie. I have a new way of possibly you looking at this. Maybe it'll change your mind, maybe it won't, but at least I'll leave you with this when it comes to this. Is not only do I think it's a horror movie, I think it's a slasher movie. And I'll tell you the reason why. Replace the Predator with Jason, replace the Predator with Michael. It's the same movie.
No, you're totally right.
Yeah, the formula is exactly the same. It's about a monster. It's actually even the same formula as Jaws. It's an unstoppable force, systematically killing individuals one at a time till the last person, the final girl, is left. And in this case, the final girl is it's a testosterone filled version of a slasher movie, but it is a slasher movie nonetheless. So I'm curious, what your perspective with that in mind is.
Well, here's the thing: both of us can be right, and both of us can be wrong.
Absolutely.
That's the fun thing of just having the world that we live in. I do consider it sci-fi thriller.
Okay.
Usually, in just my head, if it's a cat and mouse game, and there's not like an over impending fear of like, it's just so hard to define because like when you start really like trying to use your words, it all sounds the same. Like, oh well, obviously it's a horror movie, so it's like it's a captain's choice thing, whatever you want to take it.
Yeah.
I just consider those kind of things like a thriller where you can be sort of you can laugh at yourself and be like superfluous of like, oh well, the amount of blood makes it a horror, or like the amount of impending doom that it's like a massive force coming down on you and you can't explain it. The issue is like the more that you have those kind of movies that explain the alien or the monster or the creature, you take away that fear that holds its power. It's kind of the thing of like the more you know about something, it's like the Tony Stark effect. Like Tony Stark learns from his mistakes. That kind of thing. Like you're not afraid of anything anymore because you know how to battle it.
The
So I
Hitchcock.
think it pulls it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hitchcock phenomenon.
So I don't know, but I think it's really, and I think too many people get caught up in that shit too. When you're trying to put labels on stuff, just like real life, you make things way more complicated than they need to be. So having it as kind of just watch it and feel a feeling, and that's it. If you like, I know that that's part of the marketing too, because certain types of people, they don't want to watch comedies. They're just not a comedic person.
Sure.
Some people don't want to watch documentaries. They just don't want to watch someone narrate over some penguins or something. So when you put a label on it, like you definitely are finding your demographic.
Sure.
But I think that really kills a lot of media that you can consume, and it really prevents people from enjoying stuff because of like if you put like a horror label on it, number one, we all know that horror is kind of like blacklisted, at least for a long time. Now it's kind of again that ebb and flow thing.
Oh yeah.
If you called it a horror movie, theaters wouldn't play it for longer than what a normal action movie would be. Like if you put it up next to like a Mission Impossible would go longer within the theater run because it's not offending people, making people vomit, having, I feel chest pains because I watched Terrifier 2, like all that bullshit. So there's like a hesitation of like calling something horror when you're marketing a movie. So I don't know, when those two movies came out, like let's just again say Terminator and Predator, do any of us know how they were actually marketed? Like what genre they were told, like when the trailer came out or like when the marquees were put and posters? Like do we know how it was?
I definitely know for Predator, it was marketed as an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie because it was Joe Silver. and John McTiernan, because Joel Silver was the ultimate action producer, the guy who said, and you can see it in all his movies, I don't produce something unless it gives me a hard on, which is like one of them. Like you can see it like in like the jokes in Honest Trailer about Predator are it's so fucking honest. Like literally, when we saw it at the Music Box, people lost their fucking minds, and like, you know, that whole thing, like, Dylan, you son of a bitch, and like, bam, and like not only did everybody lose their shit, everyone grew a mustache. Like it just, it's just so much testosterone in that movie. I love it.
I think that's one of the best parts of the movie, because that's when a tone becomes a character. Like a lot of movies, they don't have an identity. They just kind of go through the color by number scheme, and like your characters do shit and the story happens and then the movie's over. But like Predator, not to put it on a pedestal, but like, yeah, the whole movie has this like alpha male testosterone kind of feeling, and it makes you feel cool. Like the quips when he throws the damn knife at the person, like
stick around.
The ability to have these larger than life characters not be afraid of what's going on, and having the dude cut his chest on the walkway, the tree bridge, like that shit makes you feel cool. Like that empowers whoever that you're watching, the same way as if you see a character quivering in the shower after they see someone die or something. Like it's still the empathy, and it can go in the other way. So I love like the bravado and like that machismo factor of that movie, because it makes you feel like the hero can overcome the monster. Like obviously they are going to, but you're tricking your brain into believing it as well, other than like the reality of like, oh, well, Arnold Schwarzenegger's not going to lose. But the movie's like, yeah, like kill him, like, you know, do whatever. Home Alone that bitch.
Yeah, fuck yeah. And you know what? You know what's so funny? Speaking of movies that there was some shit that I didn't remember, is that like the whole thing with Jesse Ventura's character and Duke when Jesse Ventura dies, and like how emotional he got about him dying, and like, you know, the burial and shit. I'm like, I had forgotten like all that stuff, and I think that's part of the reason why I think the machismo works, because yeah, it's larger than life, but it's real. Like these motherfuckers are like, you know, Green Berets and shit, and like I knew some of these guys, like these guys that were the manly men, but they weren't not real. Like they were real dudes. Like and I think that's what allows Predator to be the timeless classic that it is because these are real motherfuckers. And also too, is more importantly, it's a world that's lived in. These guys have had a history, and they're professionals. And it's what's interesting about it is it has its whole lore behind it, but then they're dropped into a situation where they're versing off with the Predator. So I mean, that's what makes it great is that these guys are, yeah, they're larger than life, but they're real motherfuckers. They're real guys.
I couldn't say it better. I agree. This is just a Predator podcast now.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Predator is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's one of the greatest things about it. Like, even if we want to go back to the topic of labels, the fact that so many things could be applied to this movie is part of what makes it so amazing. It's an action movie. It's a sci-fi movie. It's a horror movie. It's a thriller movie. It's a gory movie. It's a creature movie. It's all these amazing things wrapped into this master package of a great story and a great visual experience that you're going to walk away and you're going to remember it. You are going to remember this movie for most of your life, if not the rest of your life, because it just leaves that impact with you.
I think too, when you look at a movie like that, especially in the time frame that it was released, there's far more movies that were inspired by that movie and the archetype of your heroes, the unwavering kind of like challenge, and you have to overcome stuff, than what came before it. Like, they took a chance, they made some decisions. Obviously, the cast that they had made it better, but I really love those movies that they don't die off after a decade, and they inspire so many other, not copies, but they motivate people to go, I want to make a movie like that. Like, I want to write a story that's got a Carl Weathers inspired character in it. Like, I think that's why I enjoy some of those movies like that, because they seem surreal. And again, not to like put certain filmmakers in a spotlight. And obviously it's not like The Predator is an underrated movie, but they live so long because they are so good. Like it's not like a lightning in a bottle thing where it's a one and done, one hit wonder sort of thing. We still talk about them. I did a podcast for The Thing, and that was one of the things like that we kept going back to. It was like, we're still talking about it. We're two nobodies talking into our computer screens with no one around, still talking about a movie that bombed in the theater, and John Carpenter's still alive and he's still doing stuff. It's the same way with Predator. People still reference it. It's still in movie. Like people still comment on it and put it in like screenwriting now as like a reference. It's a part of the culture. So like, yeah, you can say, well, you don't like The Predator. Oh, that's okay to be wrong. It's okay. It's just one of those things.
Too, in the Thing, I was just, when we were talking about The Thing, I remembered there's a phenomenal documentary on Shudder called In Search of Darkness. And when they finally got to The Thing, that one of the lead singers of Slipknot, or one of the members of Slipknot, was talking about it. And I think what makes The Thing really phenomenal is the people that are in it, because they are real people. These people. And that scene when the Thing is coming out of the dead body, and then all of them like look back at it at the same time, and the Slipknot guy said it the best. I forgot his name, but like he said it the best. He's like the thought that all of them are thinking at the same time. Like, look at this fucking shit. What the fuck?
Oh, you mean when the head is slowly crawling away? I love that scene because they just go, no fucking way. Like, are you really? On top of all this shit, we got a doll, for the love of fuck.
It's just like it's the ultimate, like, oh, it's gonna be one of those kind of days, huh? Yep.
God. It amazes me that movie bombed. Like, it blows my mind. Like, that movie is amazing. I don't get, like, I want it. Like, that's one of those movies, if I ever get a time machine, I'm going back just out of curiosity to be like, really? No one,
I just think too, like, it's what you're watching. If it's too visceral, or if the gore is there, especially if it's marketed in a different way, like if it's a surprise when it comes in and you see two arms get ripped off or bitten by someone who's got a mouth for a stomach, like, if you're not expecting it, it's going to come off, and it rubs people the wrong way if you're not expecting it. But I can understand why it bombed, because again, it just probably wasn't meant for that time frame, but that's how people push envelopes. That's the whole reason that art, or at least a medium that you're trying to do to convey a feeling, usually they come before their time, and then the artist is made fun of until later on. It's the whole I can't think of the painter.
Storm? Oh, painter.
It's like,
shit.
It's like your work isn't appreciated until after you're dead. It's like the whole
the artist thing. Yeah, the Picasso effect.
I was gonna say Picasso, but I didn't think that was the right.
No, you're correct. You're correct.
You get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
But the thing was, like, John Carpenter could have easily not made another movie after that. There's a few times, or at least things that I remember, where it killed his motivation. Like, his mood was just kind of shot. He was like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, this is a movie I really wanted to make. If I can't make the movies I want to make, why am I still doing this? But, he continued. So, like, you can look at it as the movie in and of itself, but you can also look at it as the movie in place in history. And then you can look at it as a movie, as a thing and an action of a person's life. And I like looking at it at all three. So kind of like the thing I mentioned before, like, I'm trying to watch movies that I maybe have seen at an earlier age, or even stuff that maybe didn't even hit the blockbuster ratings, like, that didn't make a lot of money, just to appreciate more art or spend more time and, like, knowing what was released and kind of like finding these diamonds in the rough sort of thing.
Oh, 110%. 110. You know what? And it's interesting, Leonardo DiCaprio, for better or for worse, actually had a great quote. He said, Best Picture Oscars should be determined 10 years after the fact. to really understand if a movie is good rather than something lightning in a bottle. And it's interesting, specifically about The Thing. That should be a movie that's being discussed right now. If I had to pick 3 movies that need to be discussed right now more than anything, is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing, and Demolition Man. For all very obvious reasons. For the paranoia effect of cancel culture and things of that nature. This is the most topical I'm going to get, but I think that there's something.
Vendetta. I would add that in there.
Oh yeah, dude, V for Vendetta, definitely V for Vendetta.
Dude, I would even add in recent topics with this whole resurgence of AI technology, Terminator and iRobot, especially iRobot, with how closely that timeline.
2001: Space Odyssey. The hell reminds me a lot of what's going on with Alexa and with I remember seeing a meme about that, they have all these elf on a shelf and all this shit and everything else. He's like, back when I was a kid, if a doll came back to life, he murdered your whole fucking family. It wasn't a good thing to have these fuckers running around. So I find it interesting, and The Thing is so palpable with paranoia and isolation. About who's the thing, who's the bad guy, and it's and how the whole room turns on each other so very, very quickly.
It makes me think of a lot of people actually don't remember this movie, so I'm sure both of you remember this, and it's sort of topical with the same thing that you're kind of going in of like not trusting who you're around. Do either of y'all remember a movie called The Sphere?
The Sphere.
I do not.
No, I don't recall that movie. No.
See, it's like a movie that's kind of like the Mandela effect. Like if it's not in your head already, like you're never going to think about it.
Sure.
So it's a movie with Sharon Stone, Samuel Jackson, and was it Lawrence Fishburne? Oh my God. And Dustin Hoffman. And it was in the 90s. And it's kind of a movie that's like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where there's like an omniscious kind of creature, and there's technology that's going around. It kind of came out at the same time of Event Horizon, which kind of took attention away from it. But I guarantee if you both watch it, it's number one, it's a mind fuck. It's kind of a weird movie where you don't really know what you're watching until the end, and even then you're kind of like, I don't know what I should trust. It's kind of like the unreliable narrator thing, and it makes me think of that when you're talking about those kind of movies where they have an overarching theme of not being able to truly be comfortable where you're at. You either don't trust someone that you're sitting next to, or the situation that you're in is just like, I don't like it here. Everything's bad. Something's gonna happen. So. And it was Samuel Jackson, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Sphere came out in 1998. And it's 2 hours and 14 minutes. That was another thing. Back in the 90s, don't have a movie over 2 hours, because then you'll never get time to run the movie. Like, theaters hated having movies longer than 120 minutes.
I think Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter kind of changed that. For sure, the acceptance of having movies over that long.
Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh yeah, that is true. That is true. That is very true. But I remember the movie poster for this. Like I do remember the movie poster, seeing it around. But I don't particularly remember the movie itself, or ever remember seeing a trailer for it.
It's great.
But I will.
If there's any movie that I can get you both to watch, of like, especially now that you've both said that you never watched it, watch it together. And then like talk about it, because like I think it's a completely underappreciated movie. The star power in it's great. The characters, I mean, Dustin Hoffman is usually only looked at when he was like a younger actor, I feel, in my personal opinion. The older he got, like he started getting just like weirder roles, but it's good. And a lot of people make fun of Sharon Stone because it's kind of sort of the thing like the Bruce Willis thing. I don't want to make fun of Bruce Willis. I'm sorry about his life. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like Bruce Willis is always Bruce Willis. He doesn't really play a character. He just plays Bruce Willis in a movie. So when Sharon Stone's in a movie, it's like, oh, well, you're just Basic Instinct. That's all. That's all anyone's going to remember you from. But in The Sphere, she actually is she becomes invisible. So that's the character. It works really well. Like, it's great. Even Samuel Jackson, like, I don't even, like, most people just say, oh, it's Pulp Fiction. That's all that they see. But he's actually pushed back into the background. He becomes his own character. It's like, it's a really good movie. I think it's completely underappreciated.
Solid. All right.
No, I absolutely love that. And I believe I think I'm just actually just fact checking myself right now. The yeah, that's what I thought. I think the only argument I have against Sharon Stone kind of breaking off into being something else is probably Casino. She's definitely, that's definitely one role that she's very different from, she's not mentally fit in that. Like, Basic Instinct, she's in charge. Like, she's just chaotic, crazy in Casino. So that is one argument I will say that she does step away from being the Sharon Stone kind of archetype.
Yeah, very good movie. I think the movie wouldn't have made it if she wasn't in it.
I think
She definitely helped.
there's an argument to be made about that. But anyway, so I do want to move on just a little bit. Obviously we talked about how horror entered life. So how did filmmaking and the process of making movies? Because a lot of people are fans of horror and they're fans of movies, but not everybody takes the step into actually making them. So I'm curious about what kind of involved you into starting that crazy journey.
It's funny, like everyone's got their own things, because I've talked to quite a lot of people now that have either, their first thing was like, oh well, they were a friend that the friend brought them to their audition, and like they were the extra wheel, and they kind of got bit by the bug. And then you have other people that are like born into it, where like their family's already doing something, they're working on sound, or they're a PA, or they're a colorist or something. It's like, oh well, I can do something else. So mine, it's entirely not me. It was my spouse. So they were into theater in school, and they already had that kind of like performance interest. And I'm an introvert. I've gotten better with age because I've been forced to either be in front of a camera or talk to people and do stuff. But inside, I'm just still the small little boy in his closet performing movies to myself. Like, I don't want to like do stuff in front of people. But us merging together and being in a relationship, they got an opportunity to work on a small little movie called The Hospital with Jim O'Rear, who is already kind of a prominent kind of figure. He had already done quite a few things. So it wasn't like that weird thing of a creep with a camera in a basement. What are you really making a movie, or are you going to kill me and this is going to be an August Underground sequel?
Ooh.
So we kind of were like, well, this is new. Like, let's go make a horror movie. And The Hospital was in a dilapidated, broken down, real hospital. And we slept there for a week. And that was crazy because we had no power. It was a haunted hotspot for a lot of paranormal people. And we were in a psych ward room with a mattress on the floor and Christmas lights for our like illumination, and that was our bedroom. There are quite a few stories that are like funny, but like that was where I was just a gopher. I was like, I'm here as an assistant, I'll do whatever. So I was running back and forth, doing stuff, holding equipment, carrying heavy things. Everyone needs that on a set. So it was fun, but it kind of like went away. It was just like a thing that you do. It didn't really click into me until watching it, and like it was actually a thing. And like the thing that you helped participate on, even in the smallest amount of activity, you felt kind of like, oh, I want that feeling again. Well, let me go work on another project. Let's do something else. Let me see if I can recreate that feeling. So I just kept kind of like seeing what other projects that I could work on or be a part of, and be allowed to be on set. And from a PA, I then became a boom operator. And like I love audio. I love everything about how it makes you feel. Like if it's that adage, a movie can look like shit, but if it sounds great, it'll keep you watching.
The exact opposite is true too. If a movie looks great but it has shitty fucking sound, you're gonna have problems.
So, and that's kind of the thing too, where all of our age group, we kind of grew up with pirating movies, even though we don't want to admit to it. LimeWire and FrostWire and everything. Like that was kind of just the age of the internet. And most of the time, if you would get a screener or something, like the video quality would be terrible. But if it sounded good, you could still keep watching and it'd be fine. That got into me like a bug. And I was like, I just want to help with that. I want to do stuff. Plus, from around that time frame, I was very addicted to like learning a lot of behind the scenes and like the community and all the work that goes in before the camera even gets turned on. Like all of that extra, the world that was. And most boom operators or sound recorders, they're very, very in depth with your talent, the people who are in front of the camera. Like obviously the director and whoever is there, like, you know, they're telling them what to do, but you're the one putting lavs on them. You get to talk to them and listen to them when they run lines. You get to be there almost the whole day listening to them and watching how they think and being a part of their process, and when they get amped up or when they have to like walk away to get really sad. Not many other people have that opportunity. So like I was really interested in learning, not only taking direction from where the director was and where the cinematographer was, but I was paying attention to like the warm bodies in front of the camera. Shit fascinated me. I was super happy. The problem was, and if you've ever been on a film set, when it's done, you have depression. It is like it's like being homesick, and you want to be on that next project. You want something new. It's like, oh well, okay, I guess I got to go back to my boring life now and clock into work. I'll wait till the next project. Email me back. You know, is that script ready? I'm just waiting. So that was kind of like a up and down of what was going on. And the more stuff that I worked on, I felt ballsy enough of like, I'm spending all this time watching these YouTube documentaries about how films are made. I'm listening to interviews of actors and directors. I'm looking at these like in-depth breakdowns of the editing and how all this stuff is going on and how to convey certain feelings. And I was like, all right, I'm tired of waiting. I want to do it myself. And that's basically what started the feature film that we just created. And it started in 2015 and we finally just finished it. So that's, you know, that's a big chunk of my life. And it matters too, because like I've always had a problem with finishing things. I can start shit all day long, but actually like completing something and going, all right, I'm done. I don't have that feeling very much in my life. So this is like a big thing. So I think a lot of people have a varying degree of how they got into the business. And I just want to say, whoever's listening, it doesn't matter how small. Even if you're the person putting the napkins on the craft service table and you don't do shit, you can still talk to people and get an interest. And most of the time, you're going to have someone who's nice enough to show you how a camera works or how a recorder works or how to be a grip. Grips are needed. I'm telling you, carrying heavy shit and putting lights up, it's a need. So you start there, you work hard, you're on time, you where you need to be, you take direction, you will get a call back, you will get maybe an opportunity. And if you look the part, you may get casted. Or if you don't, I mean, shit, Steve Buscemi still acts. Like, you know, there's people who look weird. Character actors make money. So please don't think that just because you have an asymmetrical face or like you don't like your mouth or your nose, like you can still act. Like, please don't think it's a problem. And then, yeah, if you don't want to be in front of the camera, that's cool too. Learn the equipment, learn the names of shit. If someone doesn't have to explain to you what a lens is, they're gonna want to talk to you more and be like, all right, I'm gonna road trip with you and we're going to this project.
And maybe we'll let you hold the lens, but just don't tell them how much it costs.
2 hands, always 2 hands,
always 2 hands. That's.
Do you have it? Tell me you have it. Got it.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Now it's your responsibility.
Exactly. 2 rules of 3 rules of film: never have shitty crafty. Always 2 hands, and always have backup of your film and your audio, and you'll be just fine. Follow those rules, you'll be just fine. So obviously you're talking to 2 filmmakers, and we love to talk about the craft of the film. You're going to get an acting and producing perspective, and Zach, you're gonna get a directing and post perspective. So number one, give us a quick description about what Parallels is, for the regular audience. and then we'll have some fun breaking it down into your experience of pre-production, production, and post-production. But I did want to give a quick description of the film, and then we'll start talking fun filmmaking stuff.
I would love to, and I have the Blu-ray that just came in the mail this week. So from the back of the box, a young
say it in a Shakespearean way.
So a young woman becomes possessed by supernatural entities, and her family spirals out of control around her. Two monster hunters must race against the odds to save her, and before it's too late for everyone. We kept it as plain and simple as a log line so that as many people can be interested in as possible. To break it down just a little bit further, it is a story about family, about bonds, and just because we were talking about genres, we initially wanted to have it as a horror movie, but here's the neat thing about actually doing it. Like, writing a story is difficult. Rewriting a story is even more difficult, especially if you're doing it yourself. So Parallels went through like 21 rewrites, 21 different like versions because it had taken so long. Technically, this movie, I have my thing. Technically, this movie in 2015 was a completely different story entirely. Because I changed as a person over time and the project got bigger and bigger, and instead of a 15-minute short, it became an hour and 45-minute movie. Things kind of had to keep moving, and the pieces had to get bigger, and we had to try and the scale was what kind of kept going and ebbing and flowing. So the story in and of itself is basically these family bonds between these two groups of characters. They come together and they converge. The problem is they don't converge very well. It's like oil and water. And when we started filming it, we were like, oh my God, this is a drama. Like, this isn't just a horror movie. Like, we have something like way better. And I have to give like all of the merit and the props to the cast that we have, because like the characters in and of itself, when you're in your head, like you can make noises, you can make accents, but it's still you. And if it sounds a certain way, you're like, okay, I guess that works. When I was on set and listening to the dialogue, we were changing stuff on the day. I can admit that, sometimes my grammar, placement, how I've written stuff, there's mistakes. There's plenty of stuff where like, oh my God, that hit my ears terrible. I don't want that. Say something different. Like, we need to change, flip some words around. But being able to actually like watch some of these characters go through a roller coaster of emotions, where like we got a what's it called? Like a split genre movie. So definitely a horror drama or a drama horror. So that's basically the description without giving too much away yet of the movie.
No problem at all. And you know what? I actually love those type of things. And I think that sometimes horror dramas are often pretty rare. The last great one I saw was a television show, which was A House on Haunted Hill. Or Haunting of Hill House. Sorry, Haunting of Hill House is probably one of the best drama horrors that I've seen in a long time. And my fiance actually was the one like, you need to watch this. And I was kind of dragging my feet, and she's like, you need to watch this. This is a fantastic story. And I went for it. So yeah, I do love to get the filmmakers' takes, because that's part of the fun of the Nightmares podcast for us to talk about that. So, let's dive into pre-production. Obviously, you were writing this for a long time, but, when did you know it was kind of getting a little serious, when you started getting into like having funding discussions and the casting part and things like that, and, finding locations and, when did that kind of evolve, and maybe break down and explain that process?
So I don't know if I can speak to a lot of different people who were in the same kind of shoes that I was in, but you sort of, it's like self-deprecation. Like, there's a lot of times when you have an idea, you don't think it's good enough. So when you keep it internalized, you just keep telling yourself, it's not good enough. It's just a short story. It's whatever. It started on my phone as like an idea. I watched a movie. I don't even remember what movie it was. But I was like, okay, I have an idea. It's just a small notepad of an idea. Well, from that, I started kind of like spider webbing into, well, what could happen? If XYZ occurred, what would happen? What would be the consequences, the cause and effect of stuff? And basically, like that original idea, it's kind of like a 360 concept. And I kind of wrote like 4 different stories of, well, what works the best? Like what do I want someone to feel when they're watching it? Like, should it be a happy ending? Should it be open-ended? Should it be controversial? Should I make something like Cannibal Holocausty? Like, what do I want to do? And in doing that, my brain was like, you're never going to make it. So I was tempering my expectations that I don't have to worry about actually doing it and like being afraid of putting forth the effort. And I give that people as advice. Like I have a platform to give people advice, like an idiot. But I tell people, it's like, try and do that, because if you think of an idea as a plan, you're going to start doubting yourself or canceling dates. Like just do it. Just don't worry about like the consequences. Just see what happens. Yes, that's kind of scary, but that's the whole point. It's just like quitting your job and going to a different profession. Like you already have an income. You already have your life around going to this one location to do whatever bullshit vanilla job that you have, but you want more money, or you want more creativity. It's the same thing when you're doing a hobby or something that involves more time. You just have to swallow it and do it. So I had this short story for a few years, and around that time frame, I was still working on people's sets. So I was still doing stuff. I was still learning, trying to figure out um, where my place was. I was still doing audio, but I was still like helping around and just trying to get more skills. I was trying to figure out, without annoying the shit out of people. I was just trying to pick up on different things. And around the time frame too, like when I first started getting into movies around 2010 and 2011, I had a YouTube channel, and I just talked about video games and movie news, and I would like compile stuff, and I would learn how to edit stuff together in a very slapdash way, and just kind of a very linear sort of thing. And then the more that I worked on film, I was like, well, let me just stretch my arms out a little bit. And I started making like fake trailers of movies. Like, you remember there's a big like surgence of making like Dumb and Dumber, the trailer, into be a horror movie.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah,
change
yeah,
the audio and make
yeah.
it. So that intrigued the hell out of me. I was like, that's so cool to create something that's already a thing and to change the perspective on it. So I was doing that on my own and just never releasing anything, because obviously copyright stuff. And my original YouTube that like had a bunch of stuff that I had posted, it got taken down because there were a bunch of shits. Viacom was like, oh, you have too much copyright infringement. And I was uploading like video game let's plays and whatever else. But all of that was just learning storage management, how to actually work with file types. I was getting all of this kind of like foundational things aware of. And, I lost footage. I had hiccups and technical problems. I was already getting all that like experience. So I wasn't going to freak out and panic when it actually happened. So I was already kind of like building like a toolkit. So it really started getting serious with Parallels around 2017. So about 2 years after I started writing it. And I finally let someone like read it, a friend in the film business that I respected their opinion. And I told him, I was like, if it's shit, tell me. If it needs help, I need to learn. Like, I need critical coaching, because if not, I'm just lying to myself. I want to be better, and I need someone to tell me if it's bullshit. Tell me it's bullshit. So I let them read it, and again, it was a completely different story than what we have now, what we have filmed and edited and going to release. And they didn't dick me around. They were like, it needs work. It needs epoxy and duct tape, and like there's a lot of stuff that you need to have worked on, but the idea is there, and you're doing something different with a trope of supernatural possession that's different. So don't lose that, but maybe think about changing everything else. So I was like, okay. So, and because I didn't have these expectations in my head, it wasn't like I was cutting my legs off. It wasn't like I was sacrificing anything. It was like, okay, I can do that. So again, working on a film set and in my spare times, I'm just trying to change stuff. And again, I wasn't typing it out. I was still on a phone. So everything was thumbing. I was just thumbing the script together and just, doing stuff. And it was in Celtics. It was when Celtics still had their mobile app. They no longer have it because they're
Yep.
crap company.
Yeah.
Lol, all this sounds so familiar. I want to point that out. You remind me so much of myself, especially in those
That's
years
cool.
when I was working in a movie theater.
There you go.
Yeah.
So another year went by, and we were at a film festival. So we had worked on a project called Kill Dolly Kill, and it was a sequel to Dolly Deadly. And I had met Rebecca Erb and Tony Walters on that set. And not to be descriptive in a negative way, but it was a very rough shoot. Everything had to be adapted. Like there wasn't like a set plan. So every day was like a brand new adventure. And that sounds cool sometimes, but when you're on a tight budget with a tight schedule with people from different states, it didn't go over well. So it was really rough, but in that kind of rough situation, we bonded really well, and like we were able to problem solve together. And like when you're with people that are in a really terrible situation and you get to see how they are after they've been up for 20 hours and they don't have that facade of like that fake personality anymore, oh my God, is that amazing? Because there's just no more what's the word? Like you're not afraid of showing who you are anymore because you've been up forever. The only thing that you've had is like sausage links from 6 hours ago and maybe some chips, like, an old bottle of water that you've had in your back pocket for 8 hours. So it was a really energizing way of talking to people because you didn't really have to worry about your perception of like what you see. Like all of us were stinky. Like we hadn't really had any kind of like personal space. And we were able to talk about movies, what we liked, what our interests were, projects that we had in the back burner. And Parallels was one of those that I'd mentioned. And I let Rebecca read it. And because she liked it, she made Tony read it. And then it was, okay, so we have like something starting to sizzle. It's starting to boil. Like the water is starting to, the meal is coming together. So that was an additional motivation of like, okay, I now have a handful of people that I trust that don't have any reason to lie to me, and they're behind me. Let me move to the next step. So the film festival, we had the ability to become friends with Amber Burns, and Amber's the lead, who's in this top corner right here, there and there, and then right there. So I was scared shitless. At this point, the story was getting longer. And again, that self-deprecation started leaking in of like, man, this is becoming a longer story. Like I've never done anything like this big before. And I didn't want to talk to Amber. So my spouse, again, who kind of brought me into the thing, they went up to them and asked them. And they were excited, and, not really much time passed. And they're like, okay, I'll do it. I was like, okay, like that simple. So from then we had a few more rewrites. The story kind of expanded into a 3-chapter kind of thing where it's that normal stereotype of what a movie kind of should be. You have your first act, your second act, your third act. And I started getting really serious about learning post-production and future proofing what I'm going to do. Like if I'm going to do it, I don't want to be able to have an excuse and it just like sit and gestate. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to edit it. I don't know what to do. I don't like that. And I'm very OCD. I'm very meticulous. So I spent a lot of time learning DaVinci Resolve. That's what I edited the movie on.
Sure.
And I spent an amazing amount of time just watching tutorials over and over again, learning the ins and outs, how to actually convey my questions. I think that's a big thing too. Like if you don't know how to ask a question, you're not going to get the answer that you need. So like you have to kind of have the ability of knowing some of what you're talking about. That way the other person can understand what you're conveying. And yeah, eventually the movie was ready to like start filming. And we're like, okay, so we need funding. And we're like, okay, let's do Indiegogo. And that was the whole, oh my God, that was the whole thing. So like I had never funded a movie before. I've always walked on another person's set. It's never been my thing. I never knew where the money came from. I didn't know where distribution, producers, all that stuff was kind of foreign to me because it's kind of always like behind that closed door thing.
Different kind of thing when you're the boss, isn't it?
Yeah. So I kind of had to pick the brains of some other people in my circle of like how to maintain that. What do you do? Like what you wake up and what's step one? Like what is everything? So all of that was like very scary. And again, because I'm an introvert, I'm getting sick. Like this is where the anxiety starts coming in, because now you have not just a small select people looking at you. If you publicly admit, hey, this is a project I'm going to start working on, and then you start asking people for money, oh my God, does like the pressure start really eating you alive? But we had an amazing Indiegogo. We started from nothing. We had a very lovely preliminary stretch where we were trying to get attention. And because of the people that I knew and the people that they knew, we had a very large community that wanted to help each other. And we hit our goal in the first week. And from then on, we just kept the Indiegogo open. And I think we got, I haven't looked at it in a while. It was underneath 16,000, which is nothing compared to like what other movies are making. But for me, usually making movies on like a $50 budget, like around the house or something, and then working on sets that they did have money, but like again, if you're on the bottom of the totem pole, like you don't see how much money that they need or how much stuff costs. It was amazing. It was great. Like I was, oh my God, I have 15 grand, like whatever. That went immediately. That was nothing. Like that money went away. So the interesting thing, and this is kind of like in the biography of my life where I'm like, haha, this is a rim shot. This is like a joke. COVID really helped. Like COVID helped immensely. And I'll explain. I'm not an asshole. I'm happy that COVID happened for my movie. I hate that COVID happened for the world.
Yeah.
But I'll explain why. So if COVID hadn't happened and we had the script the way that it was intended, we were going to shoot in the summer of 2020. And in April, we made the decision to delay because basically in February of that year, everything started to really like go to shit. Everything was on fire, jobs and businesses, everything was going down. And we waited till basically the last bit that we could, because we were going to start filming in June. And, you know, all of us were there. It was surreal. It was like, is the world really on fire? Like, is this going to blow over? Is this a thing? And when it didn't blow over, we're like, oh my God, like, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to delay the movie. So I do remember I made a video post and I threw up before the video post because the anxiety was just so bad of having to delay the movie and telling all these people that gave us a lot of money and, you know, what we had promised. I'd never done that before. It was so weird. I was transported back to when I was in grade school and it was the first essay I had to read in front of my class. It was like terrible. But when we delayed the movie, we delayed it for a full year. That way we wanted to film in the summer, not only for money wise, it's just easier because of the temperature. Where we were filming in both Tennessee and Indiana, the climate was going to be fine. It wasn't going to kill anyone. It's not extremely cold or extremely hot. All that stuff was like fine. And longer days. You always want longer days.
Sure.
But we delayed the movie. And when we did that, we were like, oh, okay. we have 300, at least 300 days with some bullshit to make this movie better. So what we actually did is I went up to Indiana where Tony and Becca were, and we played out the movie in their house. Tony and I spent 2 days going through their house because that was a majority of where the movie's shot. And the other half is in Tennessee, which is cool too, because you never know. When you watch the movie, you'll never understand. It's like, well, it's between 2 states and 2 months. We filmed in Indiana in June and Tennessee in July. And the way it's edited together, like, you'd never know. It's super proud of that. But we walked through the whole script and we were talking about, I'm just so happy that I had him as a partner. We talked about the details, the motivations, even the clothing choices, because we wanted everything to be specific, planned out, popping. We didn't want like double colors to like merge on screen. We wanted everything to kind of have its own color scheme and to be able to like pinpoint when you're watching something of how to track something. So characters had specific colors, and we had like, it was amazing.
And
so
real quick, that's interrupted, but this is I heard you say Tony. Is this Tony Wash?
Tony Walters.
Tony Walters. Okay, I wanted to I wanted to make sure that I wasn't thinking of somebody else. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No,
Please
you're good.
continue.
Yeah. So Tony Walters and Rebecca Erb, they were Rad Entertainment. That's their production. But I'm glad you asked, because you're probably not the only one who thought I was talking about someone else. But within that year, we were able to. I rewrote the story again like 4 times, because we added more stuff. Like, there were characters that didn't have a specific character arc that needed something more substantial. It was like, and again, you need people around you to not bullshit you and go, okay, 80% of your story is good, 10% of it is dog shit, and then the other 10% needs work. So like, having the group of people around me, we were able to kind of like dial down or cut the fat off, but like put more stuff. And Anders, that's the character. Where's he at? That's Jason Crow. Jason Crow's amazing. I love Jason. But his character was kind of underutilized within the last third act of the movie. And within that COVID rewrite, we put a lot more into it and had him. I'm so happy. It's such a better ending of the movie because of the more involvement that he was in the story. But yeah, then COVID didn't really end, but 2021 happened, and we filmed the movie. It was 8 days. We filmed 4 days in Indiana and 4 days in Tennessee, and it was very difficult. It's very hard. I'm never going to film a movie in 8 days again.
I wouldn't recommend
it. But no, it's very bad. But everyone who's around me, they complimented the shit out of me, because it was like my first time really making a film schedule, and I was, again, very OCD, super anal about timing and planning and preparation. Most of it worked out very well. Surprisingly good. Like, there was not really that many horror stories from the actual production. Long days though, that sucked. It was kind of difficult, but the way that it worked out and the strategy behind it, hopefully it makes sense when I explain it. The first 4 days we filmed in June were in Indiana, and it was the majority of the dialogue. So the characters were learning about themselves, and then our cast was being able to like transcend all of these emotions together in the short time frame and like have a bond. And we kind of did that on purpose, because in the next month, in the 4 days in Tennessee, that's where all the heavy duty long special effects days were. So in my mind, it was like, well, if we have all of these people bond and they're friends, those days are going to seem a lot shorter, because the person you're next to, there's already a camaraderie there. There's already kind of an unspoken language maybe. And because of like the violence and blood and guts and gore and everything, like it's just easier to manage if you know who's next to you. And it worked out pretty perfectly, to the plan.
Wonderful. That's awesome.
But
So I did have a quick question about your actors. Walk me through a little bit of the audition process, and how you picked these individuals and how that worked out for you.
I'm glad you asked because like I could talk about this movie forever. There's so much stuff that happened. So the audition process was again another anxiety-inducing thing. When it got bigger, you started realizing that these characters actually have to be embodied by real people. Like, yeah, it's dumb when you say it out loud, but like to me, when I was writing these stories, I didn't really have anyone pictured. I wasn't writing it for a specific person. But then the day came where I was like, you're going to have people do this, and you're going to have to figure out how they're going to emphatically say these words, like where you're going to have to direct them on what you want them to say. So I didn't sleep for a few nights after that realization. And it was just like, okay. So the audition process was actually, it is multi-tiered. So like in that film festival at Midwest Horror Fest was one of the things that actually like Rebecca Urban Tony were doing. It was kind of like their festival. And I spoke with Amber. She was the first one who was casted. So she was like the exclamation point of like the reality check. Okay, this is happening. So it kind of helped because with what she had done and how serious she was going to take the role, I kind of already knew the tone of the different people that I needed to attach to her. So like I put a lot of adoration for like her helping me pick people, even unintentionally. Like she didn't like help me with the casting, but knowing that she was going to be on the screen and I had to match people with her energy, and especially the character because she is playing the possessed lead. How is that going to work? You got to have chemistry. There has to be something there. And then watching people from behind the camera, they have to work together. If you have a lazy co-star or someone who does not care about how to say their lines or even to just be there, to be present, to actually like take everything seriously, it kills the whole production. It not only hurts the person that they're acting alongside of, but like the camera operator's getting angry, the sound person's getting mad because they're never saying their lines the same way. They're always upping and downing with their volume. Oh my God, it's so annoying. But and then you have the director who, depending on their mood, could be very flippant and then could push that other person further into the hole that they have. So it's like it's a big domino effect. So after Amber, I was like, okay, it's a very small cast, but she's prominently the only female within the lead or within like the accompaniment of what this story is. And that was a purpose. We kind of wanted to alienate the one female that's possessed and kind of like an overbearing men thing around her. That way you kind of know where the line in the fence was, the line in the sand. That did change with some stuff because we have Jesse Cochran and Brittany Blanton in the movie as well, in other cast, but that didn't come out until later within writing. But Jason Crow was someone that I'd worked with before, and actually was the first movie that we worked on, The Hospital. And he's like, a lot of people talk about him as if like he's like a Heath Ledger or like a Christian Bale. And not to take anything away from him, he is, but he's his own thing. Like Jason's very meticulous. He loves taking shit seriously, but he's got a really good sense of humor. He will help around on set even when he's not needed. Like he's not an actor who will just sit down and wait. He will pick up shit. He will move stuff. He will help with food. He'll do whatever. He does not care. Even when he's covered in mud and dirt and blood, like in this movie, he was still moving tables. He was moving lights. He was helping. What can I do? Am I in your way? He's amazing. I love him. So I was afraid to ask him at first because it's like the level that he was at and the level that I thought myself was at. Because again, that self-deprecation shit, like I was already in my own head of like, no one likes me. No one's going to read my story. I'm wasting my time. So I was at work one day and it's very, very bad work day to the point where I didn't care anymore. I was like, whatever. I was already kicked and like just a very poor day in my career. And I said, screw it. I messaged him. I had a big blurb of a paragraph, and he literally just responded back like, "I'll do it." That's it. Like I literally
Okay.
thought I literally thought for like a month of he'll never do it. He'll never do it. He won't even respond to my message. And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And it worked out perfectly. So there I am with like two, in my opinion, very powerhouse people, and the characters that they play in the story are brother and sister. So I already have like a major tent pole of not only professionalism and the way that they give a shit about independent film. I was like, I can't lose. I mean, even if what I wrote is not good enough, they're going to make it sound better. So that kind of, my confidence level kind of like raised.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, well, now it's going to be my fault if I can't complete the cast. So I just kind of kept going down the line, and I went on a site called Backstage, and that's one of the major components of trying to find people and supporting cast and extras and different stuff. And I had no expectations because I'm no one. I've not done anything with my name on it except being a boom operator and a PA. So very low expectations. I needed to cast 4 people. So I needed to cast a younger version of Amelia, who Amber plays, the possessed woman. I needed to find Albert, who is basically what I feel is the audience. Usually there's a story where like a character is embodying the viewers. It's like we follow their journey and how like they see stuff. So it's kind of like a third person perspective story, but we're following at least one person. We anchor to him, and like how he reacts is like how we would react. And I was like, if I don't get someone that's really good there, like that's going to be another character that kind of can like kill the theme of the movie, or like how, halfway through a movie, you either know if you want to finish it or not by most people's standards.
Yeah.
So I needed to cast him. I needed to cast Lenny, who was kind of a side character. At the time I was casting him, he was very, very small bit. But when I actually found the person who was actually a coworker of mine, it wasn't, I didn't even need to go through the casting list because of his charisma, the way that he was able to improv and just different stuff and just his personality. I wrote him to be a bigger role, not by much, but just doubling it.
Enough of a role. Yeah, for sure.
And then Patrick, the male lead, which was basically kind of, in my opinion, like Leonidas. If Gerard Butler wasn't in 300, no one cares about Spartans. Like, you need your leader, your king. Like it was a big role to fill. And long story short, so I threw out these log lines and these specific one sheet pages of auditions. Literally, I could not stop the notifications on my phone. It felt like I was being punked. So it was so stupid. So for the younger version of Amelia, the younger version of Amber's character, I got 700 responses. It's like 713, 714 something. And I was like, what am I going to, I can't go through all these people. I'm one person. I have a day job. I have things to do. So, but then like all of that stuff was like, is this real? Is this a real opportunity? Like, can I really do the thing that I always see other people do, and like the stuff in the behind the scenes documentaries of like movies of like finding the right person? And it was so stupid. It was so ridiculous. And then I got like 300 for the Albert character. And it kind of trickled down from there because like the side character, no one really had an interest in. But then I got a few that for the Patrick, the lead role. And I was talking to people from like Scotland and California and people who actually had like agencies. And I was like, I am nothing. Like, how am I going to do any of this? How do I talk to people? And I was started forgetting English. So
You know what, Dan? Too.
Again, I had.
I was
Go ahead.
going to bring this up too. This is it reminded me of a phenomenal book that I read called, because I have the acting background, so I know that anxiety of being in the room and hoping they pick me, and and I'm also nothing, and these aren't I'd like to say that they're individual fears, but they're very, very widespread. Wrote a phenomenal book called The Secrets of a Talent Casting Agent. And it was by a lady who actually became a very famous casting agent, but before she was actually an actor. And she had gone to auditions. And in the first chapter, it was everyone in that room is anxious. And then she started to list, because when actors walked in, they go, "Oh my God, I hope I get this part. I hope I'm the person that they're looking for. What happens if I say this line right?" And the funny thing is, and actually now I've been on both sides of that table. On this side, they're going, "Oh my God, I hope we find the right person. What the fuck's going to happen if we don't find the right person? We're never going to be able to get this film off the ground, and all these people are going to be out of work." And it's all around this thing. And I think that I'm often reminded that if you know that, it takes away this superiority complex or inferiority complex that everybody has simultaneously, and then it brings it back to just being human beings, and it brings everybody back down. The perfect example is, and I've heard this from many directors, that same thing of what you just said. Well, I'm just nobody. Like, no, you got something to say. Like, you got interesting. And by the way, film projects just attract attention, period. Like, if you see somebody filming on the street, everyone will just flock toward it, like a moth to a flame. And I've had this discussion, with Zack and with other people, that we get surprised, but also at the same time, films, it's not reality, but film is sexy. And people are attracted to it. That's not reality. And we keep telling them that it's not reality. It's a really, really fucking hard work, and it's dirty, and it's frustrating, and there's a lot of other parts to it. But there are also some really, really fun moments that kind of make up for that. But even we get surprised. We have a very small channel, but I remember the first Living Nightmares we did, we got 2 people to audition. We had 1 person that I already knew that it was an actress. Second one, we got 15 submissions. And then what was number 4 when we finally landed it?
We got like 200 just out of, and it wasn't for episode 4. It was for episode 3.
Three, yeah.
And it was just like what the fuck?
So we all get these complexes where we're like, oh, who the fuck am I, and what the fuck am I doing here? And then as soon as you just get the fuck over it, not to be a jackass, but trust me, I've had to say that conversation to myself. Be like, Mark, just get the fuck over it. And you actually put it out there, you'd be amazed at how many people are like, no, I totally want to be a part of that. It sounds awesome. Oh yeah. When we've told people, the shit that we're doing, we're like, oh, that sounds fucking awesome. I'd love to be a part of it. And I'm like, you want to, seriously? Like, you really want to do this?
It's hard to jump that line though, because everyone has a complex, but it's really hard to say the thing or jump off the cliff or make that decision. So no, that's great.
So something very interesting that that you were talking about, the casting process and all the great stuff. We got 2 directors here, and something that's always big. Actors love to talk about their craft. They love to talk about their techniques, and they like to communicate it with other actors. But oftentimes I don't see as many directors talk with each other specifically about how they deal with actors. And I'm always curious to hear, as an actor, what directors are thinking from their perspective about the communication techniques, rehearsal, not rehearsal, what they do, especially from a film acting perspective. So I'm very curious from both of you, maybe in relation to this film, but bring in other examples about how you see that relationship and how you kind of work it out on set, and maybe even a little bit before.
Would you go first, or you want Zach to go first?
You know what? You went first last time. I'll go first this time. So, shit. How the hell do I explain how I work with actors? Well, I work with this guy all the time, and I don't kill myself. So I guess that's a good place to start. I guess the first place you want to start when you're working with actors is, just have a mutual respect for each other. I mean, whenever you're working on a movie, making movies is stressful. It is there's a lot of moving pieces, and it can. if one thing goes wrong, everything goes into chaos, and I've seen it happen multiple times. So you want to do your best to avoid that. So having a good actor director relationship is a positive thing. Make sure the actors know what they're supposed to be doing for their scenes, go over lines with them and everything like that, and just make sure everybody's up to date on what you want for the scene to happen. And I guess that's a good way to go about things. If you can do rehearsals to, go over scenes, like if you have that opportunity, I say fully take advantage of it because it'll make the day of filming go by so much quicker. So for episode 3 of Living Nightmares, this was the first time I actually did my own rehearsals and stuff like that. Like a day before, we had the actors, funny enough, come in on separate days of each other, but it worked out phenomenally because when we actually got onto set like the week later, the actors knew the complete run through the entire shoot, and we didn't have to spend as much time blocking or anything like that. Of course, setting up lights and all that shit takes time, but that's just par for the course. But, it made things go by so much smoother, and yeah, everybody was very comfortable, and things just kind of go nice, I guess at the end of the day, the biggest thing I could say is just respect each other, treat each other with kindness, make sure everybody's comfortable doing what they're doing. Check with your actors to make sure they are comfortable doing, like, if you have a specific scene. So, a big example of this for my senior film. There was a scene where a character has to put a knife to their wrist and cut, and I didn't think to convey that during the audition. And my actress was not comfortable with that, even though the knife was dull and everything. Thankfully, I had somebody, because we were going to do an extreme close-up and have a lot of blood come out, so I was able to have my special effects artist come in and do a stand-in. So, and I ended up working with her later on, and I wanted to do similar stuff. So what I did to help her out with that, because she was a great actress and everything, I was just like, come into the studio, and I want you to be comfortable in knives. So we're going to take a knife, and you're going to play with it, you're going to do things with it, and I want you to be comfortable working with this thing. So if you're willing to put in like those extra steps to make your actors comfortable doing uncomfortable things like messing with a knife, maybe putting it to their skin, take every safety precaution possible, but also, give them tutorials, show them that this thing isn't as dangerous as you think. It's a tool and it's meant to be used as a tool. We're not trying to kill anyone, harm anyone, or do anything stupid. We're trying to make a movie, and it's all about the illusion. So, yeah, that's it, I guess. How about you, buddy?
No, so I agree with a lot of the stuff you say, and man, there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah,
especially just with parallels. So number one, yeah, mutual respect, because you're going to be with someone for days, weeks, sometimes, and everyone's working together. We all have to know either our limits, our safe words, or the maximums. Like, where is the ceiling? How far can we go, or how far can we push this? So I guess let me just go in chronological order of like what happened. So when we were ready to film and we had all the cast together, we didn't really do like a table read. We didn't have like a specifically designated time to like go through stuff. Instead, we had like a video meeting, and we were talking about motivations. So I spoke with everyone individually, and then I spoke to them as a group. And yes, we have like what's written on the page, but it was also some of the subtext of like, what is your character feeling? So within that, we were like, okay, some of these scenes are going to be kind of rough. Obviously, with like a possession movie, some people have issues with thematical themes of like biblical stuff. Maybe they don't want to be associated with certain religions, XYZ. It's different with everything. Just like guns. Some people don't want to hold a gun, and then that's fine. But you need to talk to your people, especially if you already have a name attached to something and they're signing a contract. You need to tell them what they're going to sign up for. Like, yeah. You don't just surprise something with someone or something with someone. So we went through like the motivations of everyone, and when we were getting close to filming, I told the cast, okay, there's a clear separation between the families. Patrick and Albert, the two characters who are Darren Lee Cupp and RJ Seacott, I told them, you need to have a rapport with each other. You need to talk to each other, your family. So you need to just start sending each other dumb shit on Twitter. Talk to yourself on Facebook, share shit. Just just have more of a communication together. Now, that wasn't a far-fetched thing because they worked on Idol Girl together, which was a short film done by Rebecca and Tony beforehand. Lovely, amazing production that they did. But RJ and Darren already worked together, so they already had that chemistry. Now, I told Jason Crow and Amber Burns, because they're brother and sister, you need to do the same thing. Now, your characters technically don't have a lot of conversations together on screen, but your body language and how you treat each other, that needs to be conveyed with your body acting. And they were already sort of friends because they had been in the same circles. So all of this was already kind of done as I casted the movie. I didn't really have to do anything extra. It's just within the story, we had to make sure that these specific things are you okay with this? Are you down to do this? And everyone was super 100% like, yes, full bore, let's go. The cool thing is, as far as like preparation, Darren is an international dance instructor. He's a choreographer. His life is already destined to be labeled, organized, color-coded, amazing. His script that he had when he printed it out and he organized everything, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Most meticulous I've ever seen anyone do any paperwork ever. He had color coordination between the days, the timings, the emotions, what he was conveying, the before and after. Amazing. He knew the script better than I did. So, and that's not a joke. He corrected me on
absolutely.
verbiage on set. So, and then RJ, he is a stage performer. So he's used to doing stuff without pause. He's already used to having all of his lines remembered. So when Darren and RJ are on set, I just sit back and watch. I'm watching the movie. I don't have to do shit. There was a few times where like we had to call an audible, different things had to be switched up, or I had specific things that needed to be said, like as far as like exposition and making the story make sense. Like we had a little bit of improv, but most of it was kind of confined to a specific certain scenes. But Darren and RJ already had a chemistry, so they were able to kind of go back and forth, and this timing that they had and this quirky kind of like story between the two of them. Quirky is not a right word. That's terrible. It's a very estranged relationship. But Jason and Amber, I don't want to throw the word method around. A lot of people just use method acting. Even Jason hates the term method acting. But when you're in it, you're in it. So there were scenes with both of them, specifically this scene that's a screenshot here. We have Amber possessed on the bed, and then Jason with a gun in his hand in the floor. There's a few scenes in the story where I told them before we ever filmed, this is a scene where you basically have control. We're going to let the camera roll. Audio's going to go for wherever. It's up to you. You call cut when you're done. It's kind of just an exercise because the emotion that's going on, what you're feeling in the moment, depending on the context of what just happened, go with it. So my way of directing a lot of this movie was you have specific things we have to hit. How you get there is kind of up to you. And we played around with a few scenes that were very, very strict, that things had to go the way that they were supposed to, either because like the space was very confined, we had a time limit, stuff that's out of your control, but other stuff like I want my actors to act. Like, you're here for a reason, show off. If you have a better idea, if it sounds better when you say it this way, or if you feel like you want to be positioned a little bit closer, like just talk to us. Let's know where the focal length is. I don't want whatever you're going to do to be wasted. That was the biggest thing of like, you don't have to tell me what you're going to do, but show me where you're going to be. How loud are you going to be? I don't want to waste whatever you're going to do. A short story. Robert Lasardo. I worked on a movie with Robert Lasardo, and he's a very intense actor. He usually plays a stereotype of a very aggressive individual. And there is a specific scene in Nightblade is the movie. And I was doing sound, and before this scene, he's threatening someone over the phone. So it's a very one-sided, exhausting scene because you don't have anyone that you can bounce off of. It's literally just you talking into a phone, looking like an idiot, sounding aggressive, trying to sound threatening. But he literally told us, "I'm only going to do this a handful of times." And when he said that, the director, the cinematographer, like, okay. So he was controlling everything. And he was sitting off the edge of the bed, and there was a little footstool that like you kind of help to either get into bed, or like one of those like dog stairs that like helps the dog get into a taller bed. The problem is this little footstool was half and half, where the legs were on a rug that was next to the bed and then a hardwood floor. Well, Mr. Losardo was wearing boots and he was rocking this thing back and forth. So this clicking from the hardwood floor was going over his dialogue. And we let him run it once. And again, he's very aggressive. I'm very young. I'm half his size and I do not look intimidating. I wait for an opportunity and I just politely ask him, "Can you lift your foot so I can move the rug? And you don't have to change anything you're doing. Just let me move the set and everything's fine." He refused. Flat out, no, don't move anything. And I'm like, okay. So he does it again and he's just clicking. It's just this tapping, ruining all of his dialogue. And that's it. He doesn't do ADR, from what I know of. Like, we only had a little bit here. And again, this is like learning how to talk to actors from a different perspective. So oh my God, we did this 3 times, and the director was looking over at me, and every time he was like, "Is the audio good?" And I was like, we had to do it again. So I don't know if he took offense to it, but I like asked him, "Can I move your leg?" And he lifted his leg, and I moved the whole thing over and just did it without consideration. That last take was it. He was like, "I'm doing it one more time and that's it." And I was like, all right, move the rug. Audio was perfect. The phone call was very threatening. Good. Yeah. But, oh my God, I wanted to throw up. I wanted to run out of the room. I was like,
I actually love that. And I think the one thing I was going to add as you guys were talking, and I can give an actor's perspective, 2 things. One, I fucking love that because I treat acting a lot of times like athletics. Like when somebody says like this is what we're doing and everything, I'm like, let's go, motherfucker, let's go. Like we're like, I'm all in. Let's do this shit. And it kind of becomes like being a hockey goalie. Like I've done this so many times that when it comes time for the game, I don't even think about it. I just do it. And something I was going to give Zack a compliment, but I've also seen this in many other directors as well, and it's always the best ones. Number one, this is something I heard about Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols is notorious for doing this, which is he doesn't tell his actors what to do. He kind of just sets up traffic cones. You know, he sees the direction they're driving. He just kind of sets up traffic cones quietly and then lets them go. But something that I love that Zack has done, and I've seen other directors do, which is you have a very, very quick shorthand with your crew. Everybody already knows through amazing conversations of pre-production that everybody knows what they need to do. Like the DP knows what to do. Lighting, it's very, very simple. Hey, I need this, that, da. And then immediately following that, you're back to your actors. And you're just talking. I remember when we were doing episode 4, and episode 4 was about a cop who discovers a cult of woodland cultists, essentially, and they murder people. I know there's a redundant sentence, but they trap unsuspecting travelers, and then they sacrifice them to whatever fucking goat god or whatever the fuck they're doing. And I was in the cop car, and it was really late, and Zack was on the other end with me, and all the crew was setting up the shot, and he was just talking to me because he already knew the stress that I had as a producer that day, and God only knows what the fuck we were talking about. I don't even remember what the conversation was, but he was like da da da, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then I could hear him say, "Hey Marcus, move that light over there," and right back to me. They hey, and then he's done that in other sets. And other successful directors that I have seen, when it comes to handling actors specifically, is knowing that actors sometimes need more attention. They're in the scene, especially if they're method actors, and they need that constant like push to keep going, because at the end of the day, they're in front of the camera portraying an emotion, and they need to stay consistent within that emotion, especially with film acting specifically. And the crew can have a multitude of, they're more task oriented rather than emotionally oriented. So they can be like, very much dictated to, saying, hey, that. It's very task oriented. And I've seen that been done, and it's been done to me in other situations as with other directors. And I think that's some of the best ways that directors work with actors on film, is just staying in the pocket with them. Regardless if they're behind this, if they're behind a monitor or if they're standing right. I prefer when they're standing right there, because they're actually talking to you. And then they only go back to the monitor when you were really about to roll. But that in between time of like, hey, like da 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 da. Or maybe if you want to talk about it, like what just happened. Like, hey, I saw that you did this. And then also too I loved what you said, and this is a compliment to you, which was, you said, go fucking nuts. Go for it. You're here to show off. And I have always approached that as an actor of being, my job is to give you as a director, and because I know you're going to work with the post guy, and and also if you've written this, is to give you as many options in the editing room as possible. So you have many choices of levels and things to options to choose from, and it's your job. And I trust the director to be the one to say, all right, to be the cultivator. And say, yeah, you have all these great suggestions, but then they come in and say, hey, I like this, but let's ditch that. And I trust them to be the cultivator of the situation. It's my job to bring you as many options, as much shit as possible. It's your job to bring in the traffic cones and say, hey, not that, or hey, try something different, or hey, I love what you did here, but it's at a 5, we need to go to an 8. And to be the cultivator. So I like that as an actor, and I appreciate bringing that. And I'm glad that you said that, so I can give a compliment to both of you in this scenario. The tiny bit of ass kissing, but that's okay.
No, I appreciate it, and that's basically what it was. Most of the time, I was right there with the camera guy. I was there. I was being able to talk to them, and then I'm the editor too. So the cute thing with this is we were shooting for the edit. So a lot of movies that I've worked on, there's just so much coverage. There's wasted time. There's wasted footage. I do get it where you want options to be able to kind of pad out the story, or maybe elongate a feeling, or kind of have like B-roll or something that you can kind of cut to.
Sure.
But I had already had the movie in my head for so long. We were shooting for the edit, so we didn't have a lot of extra stuff. And honestly, the most takes we ever did, we had is usually a 3-take average. 5 takes was the longest we ever did for anything, and that was just because of how professional everyone was. It wasn't. There was some technical issues sometimes, but mainly it was no, everyone's on point. I mentioned this screenshot. I want to comment on it and just give a spoiler. I've not mentioned this on any other podcast, and I just want to give a little exclusive.
Well, we're getting exclusive here, folks.
Oh, exclusive. So, in relation to your question of actor comfort and safety, this scene was filmed around the time frame that the tragedy around Alec Baldwin happened. And we had a very, very serious talk about gun safety, and we don't like messing around. We like having fun. There's a whole level of what we do to have fart jokes and toilet humor, and we poke fun. We want to have a fun time on set. And then especially if you're there for 16, 17, 18 hours, the hysteria just makes everything funny. But for this scene specifically, in a director talking with their actors, even before we were in this location, months before, we had 3 options that we were thinking of how to do this gun scene, depending on, number one, how we were feeling that day, the efficacy of how it actually will look on camera to the payoff, and then safety, making sure that we're not doing anything dumb. So the cool thing with this scene, I know it's hard to see from this, but you have Amber on the bed and then Jason on the floor next to the foot of the bed. The neat thing about this shot is it's a composite. They're not in the same shot at the same time, but the way that we did it and the way that it's edited, it is flawless. So I'm not going to spoil what happens, but someone gets shot. duh, whatever happens. But no one is having anything pointed at them. We have no situation where there's an opportunity for something to happen. And in the circles that we have, especially the people that were on the set here, I think that proved a point that you can either be clever, the camera magic, making it an illusion. You don't have to do the things that can hurt people. So whenever you watch this movie and this scene, I bet you money you won't be able to even tell if you weren't told that they weren't on the set at the same time together. So
Wow.
that was one of the bigger examples of taking consideration of who you have and the responsibility of who you're putting in front of the camera, especially like you said with the slit wrist thing. There's tons of ways that you can do that, and there's whatever to make someone safe. But if they don't want to do it, if they don't like what it means, the action, the implication of how it looks, you got to work with what you have, especially if now you have an agreement. You need to figure out what's okay, and a body double usually works. A lot of people do that for nudity.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. The so I definitely want to finish it off here with one last topic, because this is a nice little awesome. Oh, let there be light, and there was. So this is a big opportunity for us because we're filmmakers, and this is always fun. It's an opportunity for us to vent a little bit about crazy stories, funny stories, things going wrong on set. Those are always a lot of fun, but not so much fun in the moment, but they're fun afterwards. It's a funny story after the fact. So I'm curious, because we love talking about it. What were some of the fun, crazy, maybe things went wrong type of situations on the set that you can think of?
Well, there's a few, but it's was it funny at the time or is it funny now? The one that I think of the most, and really the only people who are going to be able to get this, because we're not going to release it to the public for a long time. It's part of the behind the scenes, the making of featurette that we actually have for our Blu-ray. There's an actor in the character, the creature costume that's within our main thing.
Sure.
And it's a one-piece suit, and we have blood bags, and we have these pouches everywhere that when stuff happens to them, there doesn't need to be a cut, there doesn't need to be some sort of trick. It just bleeds, or the gore is there. We don't have to do anything. The problem is when you're in a one-piece suit, just like you're in a diving suit, water gets in, it just sloshes around and you're just covered within this stuff. So there's a funny scene where, well, it's not funny in the context of the movie, but the creature destroys part of their body and it explodes within the costume. And the person that's in the costume is not wearing any underwear. So I'll just leave it at that. And afterwards they have to clean for quite a while to get all that stuff off. So it was funny at the time, but I'm sure it's still funny now. It's just so stupid. Man, I don't know.
I'm just
which
trying to
ones
figure
I
out how I would react to something like that. That is an interesting scenario.
We kept filming. They were in the moment, super professional.
Yeah, keep rolling.
If that were me and that, me in particular, I'd be like, this is going to be weird, but we're just going to roll with it. At least it's blood. I am cool with being doused in blood. It's just, never thought I'd be here.
It was funny.
I'd be preaching about that. So I was in a one-piece suit sloshed in blood all day. How was your day?
You thought of something.
I do have a funny one, and I'm gonna poke fun at myself. I'll take the brunt of this. This is one of the when it happened, I hated myself. It was a major snafu, foobar kind of thing. So, spoiler alert. Just for the sake of the podcast, it's not taking anything away from the story. Albert, our lovely RJ Seacott, in the script, he is supposed to be attacked on the neck. He has a wound that happens on his neck, and I'd comment on our film schedule before and like how I had written it out per day and just how everything was like in terms of like destroying um, wardrobe and stuff. We did it in a very chronological way. That way, the sweat, blood, whatever would continue to be as we filmed, so that it looked natural. Like we weren't going back and forth between timelines of like what was going on. So this was at the beginning of filming, so the anxiety of like having the pressure of like making sure that I can do this job, I can direct, I can manage everything. Everything was going well. We had filmed quite a few scenes with the wound where it was supposed to be. The problem is I forgot to put the wound on the actor, and we spent 4 hours filming scenes that were already done. They were great. I have no issues with them. And I was like, oh my God, I've wasted 4 hours of the day. We don't have 4 hours. That was 6 scenes. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? So what it was is he had a wound, but it was bandaged. So it was like ace bandage and like some stuff. So I'm sitting at my little command station where we have our charging tables and like everything is where our equipment is. And I'm sitting thinking of like what I'm going to do. And no one really knows because everyone's in their own little bubble. They're maintaining. We have some people setting up the next scene. Like the kitchen's got food being cooked and like everyone's got their own places and what to be. So it is completely my fault, but I also came up with just an audible within the script that he was wearing a shirt and we just changed the wound to his arm. So it was already covered. Everything was already taken care of. It made sense. Watching the story, you would never know. But that 20 minutes of trying to figure out how to problem solve and the panic of feeling like I fucked up, everything's gone, like I've ruined it. It's funny to look back on now, but I was literally like throwing up in my mouth. It was terrible. Like the anxiety was killing me. But yeah, and then that's just kind of a lesson. Shit happens. So you should be able to, if it doesn't ruin your story all too much, change it. Because sometimes it's not going to be out of your choice. You're not going to be able to choose what happens. Yeah. So, yeah.
Moments like that are dreadful.
Oh, the worst.
I've had a few situations kind of like that. Nothing to that extent, thankfully, but when those continuity issues appear, or especially when you're just done filming and you're in post-production, usually the first thing in my mind is, I'm going to have to mask that out and that's going to take hours.
There's shit within edits, man, that still to this day Zack will not point out because he's like if you guys haven't seen it, you never will.
That's a rule I have for all the visual effects I put in my films. It's like if it's like there's clear things that that are supposed to be CGI'd in or something like that. But then there's the stuff that you don't see, and it's just like, that's intentional. You'll never know what it is, because the moment I tell you, you'll never unsee it.
And also, too, is except with the exception of our dear friend Wes, who sees everything. And there's a reason why he's not scripty, because if he was scripty, nothing would ever fucking happen. He'd be like, that molecule was not in the same place that it was in the previous scene.
He literally sees split atoms moving, and it's just like, so the continuity of this shot had off because there's too much H2O, and there's like, wait, what, how?
So I have a challenge for him. If he ever watches this movie, we actually, as just a challenge to myself, because of how many people that we have in this movie that we love and who've done other stuff, we had a 2-page list of Easter eggs that we actually put into the movie as like a secondary kind of thing of like, oh, well, how many jokes can we put at ourselves and reference other movies that we've been in and all this other stuff. So like, it's kind of like chocked full of different subliminal things that maybe some other people who've watched Jason Crowe's movies or like who've done other stuff like you would be able to see. And I can't wait to like put those on like IMDb once a time has passed to like have like a bunch of trivia and stuff through it. Like I have a massive Google Doc that I've been working on since filming.
So I'll tell you a funny thing real quick. In episode 3 of Living Nightmares, It's the opening scene is two girls in an apartment. One is a night owl, and the other one wants to go to bed. And she's trying to think of shit to do, and she's like, "Let's watch a movie." And she says, "What about Friday the 13th? What about Nightmare on Elm Street?"
Oh, you're gonna go to the clowns
And then literally and then she says, "What about clowns?" And she's like, "That sounds terrible." And then the end of the scene. No one has any idea that that is an inside joke of Zack making fun of me because I was in a movie called Beware of the Clowns where I played the leader of a cult of clowns. And ironically enough, it was done in Crown Point, Indiana. So still to this day, like if you want to talk about some references that people would throw in and have no idea except our little crazy group, that's one of them.
Yeah, that's cool. Like one of the things, like Jason Crow was in a movie called Wicked Ones, and a sequel to a similar sounding movie. His outfit he brought, and we put it in the corner of a room in one of his scenes, and it's just different stuff that to take the pressure off of like what we're doing. That way we can kind of focus on other stuff and have multiple layers, a little onion, within the movie. So
exactly,
try and make it fun.
Absolutely. So, we're gonna. I always at the end of every podcast I do a question of the podcast, which I don't prepare at all. I just come up with a couple ideas and then I pick the best one in my head. So this kind of goes back to the earlier conversation that we were having. What is a horror movie that you had a complete 180 on upon second viewing? Maybe after a long period of time, something that you went, "Wow, that was either really good." Or that was a lot better than I remember, or that was a lot worse than I remember. And as per tradition, guests get to go first, but they do have the option to pass if they wanted to go around the round robin beforehand.
Well, I already think I have an answer. So
awesome.
I already mentioned it. So Session 9 is one of my favorite movies. And I don't want to say it was a 180. I enjoyed the movie when it came out and when I was like of age to like pay attention to stuff longer than 60 seconds and like, be able to kind of get a narrative and pinpoint like, hey, that's a good story. I took a lot of inspiration from Session 9 to make parallels because like I dissected the movie. I watched it twice in one day and I was counting the cuts. I was figuring out the composition of how the scenes were actually formed because I love the movie so much because again, like I commented, like Session 9 and The Thing is like what I always keep with me. And the movie just resonates with me. I love the entire thing, even with some of the plot holes and the weird like the choices that some stuff does. Like I love that movie. Like everyone who worked on that film should be very proud, but like it never gets old. It's like Snatch. Snatch is my favorite movie of all time. I can watch that. I can quote that entire movie right now if I was needed to. But when you start working on something that is of that same thing, you have a really different perception of it. I don't know, like cooking, for instance, like everyone likes eating, but when you start actually making the food and being able to understand like flavor profiles and how things go together and then considering plating and all this other shit and like, whatever, you look at it differently. So as like homework before I was like, okay, I'm going to be directing my first movie. Like this is a big thing. I have a lot of people looking at me. I have responsibilities. Don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up. Hey, don't fuck this up. So that was one of those movies. I had a handful of them, but like I still have the notes and I spent like 2 days really looking at it as if I was a film student and I had to write a report of like, why do you like this movie? I wrote it out. I watched it multiple times, and I don't think it's a complete 180. I just think that I went through a door. I think I finally was. I was looking at this door, and I was like, "This is the best ornate door. It's gorgeous. I would make out with this door." I finally opened it, and then I could see what was through it. I think that was like not like an eye-opening moment, but it really made me go like, "Hey, pay attention a little bit more closely to what you're looking at. That way you can enjoy it more than just looking at it," I guess is the best way to put it.
That's awesome, man. Zack.
Oh shit. I just had the goddamn answer in my head, and now it just blanked on me. What the hell? Mark, you go real quick while I recover that answer.
I'm actually gonna go negative,
Wow.
and mine's kind of stupid. So when I was younger, I really loved Ghost Ship. I thought it was just so fucking cool and everything else. And by the way, the first 10 minutes of it's fucking awesome. Like the whole wire and thing, like that's all dope. And I liked, and I even understood some of like the nuances of the guy kind of cheating death of who goes to heaven, who goes to hell, and he used the gold, and then I watched it again, and I'm like, this is just a lot of cheap metaphors and kind of a okay horror movie. I enjoy it, but I enjoy it like I thought it was a little bit more intellectual when I was younger, and then I got smarter, and I'm like, this really isn't that like deep, like at all. It's pretty by the fucking numbers. I mean, Mudline is in there, which was great, jamming to that, but besides that, it definitely shifted over from like in my eyes of being like The Shining to being like Freddy versus Jason. Like I fucking love Freddy versus Jason, but it's not exactly Citizen Kane. Like it's not intellectual in any way. Like even though they try to like jerry rig a fucking plot in there, but like I do love those horror movies that are just kind of like balls to the wall, just fucking fun, and like let's just watch a bunch of people die and some badass shit happen. And it just became more of that than like this kind of like deep metaphorical thing. I was like, wow, I was dumb as a kid, like really dumb. so yeah, like Ghost Ship was definitely mine. That was kind of a 180. Zach, did you remember yours?
Yeah. Okay. So the best example for this topic is American Psycho.
Oh my God! Yes, yes. Yes, you took it so fucking seriously.
The first time I tried watching the movie, I quit at the business card scene because I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. How is this movie so popular? This movie annoys me. I hate these people. Oh my God, I hate this movie. It's so awful. Everyone just sucks. Why?
And then he met me, and I literally, I'm like, I'm like, dude, it's a comedy. And I swear to God, like a fucking like light bulb went off in his head. He's like, oh, motherfucker!
I think that's what benefits talking to people. Like if you live in your own biome, like you're only gonna see a movie the same, or a book, a song, a piece of art. Like if you only talk to yourself, you're missing out. So yeah, like
dude,
you need to talk to other people. That way you can get a different.
You really do
different feeling on it.
And now he quotes
like you nailed it on the head with that one, like because that movie, like I despised it with a bloody pet. Like I'm trying to fathom in my head, like how do people like this movie? I don't get it. Like these people are they're so off. They are everything. I literally like they love themselves so much. Oh my God, look at my business card up. So what? Kill yourself. Oh my God.
And the problem is that Zach does not do well with satire until it's like explained that it's fucking satire. And like, and it was so fun. He quotes it more than we do now. Like he's like, I was like, and he's like, you got to look at it. Like these people are ridiculous. Like they're ridiculous. Like they're they can't understand the difference between having a great business card and scalp fucking a hooker. Like you don't, like you need to like understand how insane and ridiculous this is.
Satire is rough though. Like having something that is like a physical metaphor or you're making fun of something. Some people just don't get it. It's not a bad thing. No. I just think that people will take it for its word and not think that there's a different way to look at it or that it's poking fun of a specific thing. So I think that's why a lot of satirical movies don't work, because movies that make people think don't usually go over very well, depending on the demographic that you're going for.
Yep.
But like, yes. And then you have different levels of like satirical content. And again, like I mentioned, like meta stuff where it's like poking fun at itself or breaking the fourth wall, and like that can be really hard to differentiate because you're already watching something that is fictional, or you're already watching something that may be a little skewed from reality, and you're like, Oh, okay, it's a joke.
But
Okay.
but the great part about
As
it
steam
is,
comes out of your head.
oh yeah, dude. But the great part about it is when it works, it really fucking works. And I remember him I remember we watched that movie after we talked about it, and I remember looking over at him, he's fucking dying laughing, especially when we got to the Huey Lewis scene. It was do you like Huey Lewis in the news? When the sports came out in '85, and he's fucking dying. I'm like, oh, now you fucking get it. It was great. It was a great, what a treat to see that in real time and actually have watched that 180 flip. It was really
memory.
Cool.
It's not the same sort of thing, but the way that you're describing it, just labeling it a different way, and it changes how you're looking at stuff. The house that Jack built, first time I watched it, I enjoyed it. I saw what it was going for, but then I was watching it with my brother, and I was getting him to watch it, and we were talking about the subtext of what's going on. Now, I hate Lars von Trier. I really don't want to watch any other of his movies, but that was one too where if you watch it as a second viewing, I don't want to say a comedy, but it changes the dial. It's not always up to 11. It's going back and forth between should I laugh at this? Is this funny? Is there an underlying meaning to it? And I do enjoy the movie. I mean, I enjoy most of Lars von Trier's movies. I just don't like him. But that made me think of that movie when you were talking about American Psycho,
which is awesome. So hey, we'll go ahead and close this bad boy out. Good sir, if you want to look directly into your camera and tell the good people where they can find all of you, exactly like that. Exactly like that. Super fucking creepy. Just
the
dude,
screenshot.
I'm gonna. You got jokes. Zack will do that. Zack's actually going to do that.
Thank you for making my job a lot easier on that one.
Now, not only are you gonna promote something, you're gonna ingrain it into somebody's fucking soul.
Fine. Usually, everything on YouTube is just this funny videos now, anyway. So they're just that's what the thumbnail is.
It's so ridiculous.
Exactly.
Now I got 3 faces to choose from. Maybe I'll just do all 3.
Well,
the many faces of Dan.
First and foremost, thank you both. This has been an amazing part of my day. I didn't really know exactly what I was jumping into, but this has been a very nice conversation. I'm glad that both of you are so cool and amazing and easy to talk to. So, where to find me? I tried not to have that much of a social media presence, to be honest. If you are interested in what we've been talking about with Parallels, we don't have plans for distribution yet or streaming. It will come. We are getting our Indiegogo backers their material first, thanking them specifically and having them their own period of time to enjoy the movie. Afterward, we're doing some film festivals. We're going to have a run with that, see what goes, just no expectations, trying to figure out what's going to happen. If you are interested in what we're posting, Condog Films is the name of our production company. So that's CONDWG Films. We have a few profiles everywhere, but mainly it's Facebook, sadly to say. That's just right now the easiest way for people to connect. Unfortunately, we're trying to get a little bit more traction on Discord and stuff, but it's a very weird time frame and technology of how to communicate with people. But we do have a presence on Instagram as well, again, at Condog Films. The biggest thing, if you're interested in this movie, we have a Facebook group that's open to the public. You just type in Parallels Film and you'll be able to find it. We're still sharing a lot of stuff, but we have tons of transparent posts about production, what we experience that you can learn from if you're in the same boat of trying to get your film off the ground. We try to share every photo and video behind the scenes that we can without spoiling the movie. So even if you're not interested in the movie itself, give it a look, because you may be inspired or have, I gave some gadget reviews before we started filming, specific battery packs and cameras and microphones and tech equipment and just different stuff, trying to help other people get their project off the ground. So even if you don't want to watch the movie, you can at least go and see if you can learn something yourself and steal and take from people. That way your project can, be alive. Other than that, again, I'm just appreciative. Definitely check out all the people that are in this, though. You got Amber Burns and Jason Crow. You got Darren Lee Cupp, RJ Seacott. They're constantly doing other projects. RJ is still doing a lot of stage and theater stuff. So if you can see him in person, it's worth it. He's ridiculous. He's 1,000% every day. So he's definitely, keep your eyes on him.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for being on there. And hey, everybody, that's good advice though. If you're gonna steal from the best. So thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Nightmares Podcast. You can find us where all podcasts can be sold. Dan was doing another face, trying to trip me up. Like I said, you can find us where any podcast can be done. Spotify, Anchor, YouTube. All those great stuff, Apple Music. And if you can also follow us on social media, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and
Slasher.
That is the application for all things horror. And hey, if you are checking this on YouTube, if it can be so awesome to stab that like button, smash that subscribe, and click that little dingy bell to be notified every time we drop amazing content right here at MHN. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Nightmares Podcast. Bye, guys.